continue this war forever till he feels he's achieved his war aims would make him very unpopular globally. The fact is that if Israel could pursue the war on its own, it would have done so. It cannot because of technical limitations, of lack of adequate number of refuelers.
Right. Major General, I agree with you on that point. This was a war of choice that thrusted upon Iran with no clear goal in sight. And certainly, US was stretched thin at this point. I'll come back to you, sir, for further analysis. We're getting some breaking news developments at this hour. Now, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is facing a major backlash after an edited post on X showed an earlier version labeled a draft Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. Now, this has sparked speculation about external influence or scripting of the message from Washington itself.
That's right. Another post which urged US President Trump to extend the deadline to talk with Iran has now raised questions about Pakistan's diplomatic messaging and whether it's being independently crafted. Social media users are divided, with some joking about the copy-paste error, others suggesting the message was dictated by the United States. So let's put out both the posts on your screen. This is the first earlier post, left. Right is the edited post. So we see that once you click on the edit history, you can see what appears to be the earlier version of the post, shared with an extra line. Draft Pakistan Prime Minister's message on X. It's time-stamped a minute earlier than the latest post on PM Shehbaz Sharif's X profile. So let's go back to Major General J.D. Bakshi on this. So, you know, a lot of people are commenting on that post that why was this phrase written, draft Pakistan PM's message on X? So the question that they're raising is that, was this message crafted by Shehbaz Sharif or was it influenced by external factors? And we see a lot of traction online on this now, Major General.
Look, the simple fact is Pakistan's role has been that of a post office. The primary claim to fame is Asim Munir's bootlicking of Donald Trump. In the last 3 months, he has been to Washington 3 times, and traveling like a traveling salesman with a suitcase full of rare earth, metals, copper, tungsten, etc. The Pakistani military especially has a habit of bootlicking the United States and the Western powers, and that has been fairly obvious all along Pakistan's army's history. Asim Munir is the latest one to join the bootlicking bandwagon of eulogizing Donald Trump to the skies, and that is how he has managed to wriggle for himself this role of a so-called mediator. Egypt, Turkey, Iran were also, Oman were also involved, as was China behind the scenes, because this draft was discussed with the Chinese. The earlier drafts, all the peace proposals were discussed with the Chinese, who have played a quiet behind the scenes role, which is pivotal. Pakistan was just taking messages and forwarding them from United States to Iran, Iran to the United States, and the real, I think, heft is come from China, has come from China in this, which was the behind-the-scenes influencer, because it has influence with Tehran, which Pakistan totally lacks. Pakistan could just bootlick the United States. That was the sole qualification, for assuming the role of a communicator of choice. Not a negotiator, communicator of choice.
Right. Major General, I want to ask you a question about the larger picture that's now emerging. Now, regime change has certainly not taken place. Hormuz is still under Iran's shadow. Now, military capacity for sure has been hit, but not completely erased, and enriched uranium is still present inside Iran. So the big question is, what exactly did US gain out of this war?
That is precisely, Professor Robert Pape, who forecast this conflict, who told you well before it happened that this would happen. And he also told you that if the United States had taken the off-ramp on 28th of February, a peace deal was almost through, brokered by Oman. The Omani's foreign minister had said that Iran had agreed to hand over its enriched uranium to the IAEA. That was, very callously, spurned, and America and Israel attacked Iran even while the negotiations were on. Now, today, 40 days after this ridiculous war of choice started, America is worse off than it was at the start of the war. Iran is better off because it did not control the Straits of Hormuz at the start of the war. Opening the Straits of Hormuz is militarily extremely difficult unless America is prepared to put 200,000 to 300,000 boots on the ground for 18 months, and the estimate of Pentagon itself was that it would lead to 15,000 minimum body bags. Can Donald Trump afford that in a midterm election year? Absolute no. So Donald Trump has been forced to accept a deal much worse than what he was getting before he started this war.
All right. Well, thank you, Major General, for joining us here with your perspective in decoding the situation that is playing out in the conflict. There's a ceasefire which has been announced, which is a temporary measure. Thank you so much, Major General. Okay, so we will be tracking more updates coming in. And Ishita, there has been a little bit of a good news. U.S. oil prices have fallen after U.S. President Trump has announced a 2-week ceasefire in the Iran war just hours after this deadline.
Right, of course, Shivangi, the ceasefire was put in place with the agreement that the strategic Strait of Hormuz will be opened and safe passage will in fact be given to cargo ships. Take a look at this report, viewers.
Oil prices plunged sharply after US President Donald Trump agreed to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks in exchange for Tehran allowing safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Before the ceasefire, Brent crude futures spiked to about $120 per barrel, and US WTI oil climbed similarly, one of the highest levels since the year 2008. On news of Trump's conditional ceasefire, Brent fell about 14% to a $93 to $95 per barrel, and the US WTI dropped by a similar 14 to 15%, a strong reversal from the recent highs. International benchmark Brent for June delivery lost more than 15% to a $92 per barrel. Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi said Tehran will allow safe passage through the strait during the ceasefire with coordination from Iran's armed forces and with due consideration to technical limitations. The president had threatened to bomb every bridge and power plant in Iran if the leaders did not meet that deadline. The US has received a 10-point proposal from Iran that is a workable basis for negotiations, while Iran received a 15-point plan from the US earlier. Trump said the 2-week ceasefire was subject to Iran agreeing to a complete and immediate safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz.
Viewers, much coming right up. Iran claims achieving historic win by forcing US to accept its 10-point plan for ending war, calls for acceptance of uranium enrichment and removing all US sanctions. Stay tuned.
प्यास बुझाए ठंडक लाए सबको भाई जीरा सिर्फ MDH का जल जीरा जीरा सिर्फ
जीरा सिर्फ असली रिफ्रेशिंग, असली स्वाद, असली मजा।
MDH
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
सैंडविच लस्सी और छाछ और
हर घूंट में चमकी चाट। अब बताओ स्वाद आया? आया।
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चंकी चाट।
MDH
Character, the taste of success.
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा क्या स्वाद है? अरे मेरे राजा
सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
Three, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up. Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for suction of the excretion, which looks to be needing attention. But the crew in Artemis, they are well trained to handle.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
सैंडविच लस्सी और छाछ और
हर घूंट में चमकी चाट। ड्राई फ्रूट और दही बड़े। चमकी चाट से स्वाद बढ़े।
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चंकी चाट।
MDH
केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे, दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे। केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ।
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल बोलो जुबान केसरी।
आर प्योर शाही पनीर मसाला, डिलीशियस, हेल्दी एवरीडे।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up. Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the database. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for suction of the excretion, which looks to be needing a
Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching Live and Breaking on Republic TV with me, Ishita Mitra. My colleague Shivam is also present with me, and we're tracking all the developments getting in after Donald Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire between Iran and the US. So what's happening to the oil prices, to what's happening on the Dalal Strait? We're getting you all the reactions ahead.
Yeah, market seems to be stabilizing. The oil prices seem to be stabilizing because there was a bloodbath when the entire war was on. It was a very long war. It was benefiting no one, and it was a clear miscalculation by the American government on whether Iran will be striking back. And Iran held its ground and was striking the military assets in the entire Middle East. We'll get you all the latest updates on this 2-week pause, not a complete ceasefire, but definitely a 2-week pause, and other national and international breakings. But let's have a look at the top headlines of the hour first.
A day after Trump's wipeout threat and over a month-long bloodbath, Trump announces 2-week conditional ceasefire in Iran.
Both US and Iran forces halt all offensive operations after Trump's conditional ceasefire announcement.
Iran claims achieving historic win by forcing US to accept its 10-point plan for ending war, calls for acceptance of uranium enrichment and removing all US sanctions.
And Israel welcomes decision to suspend strikes against Iran, but says the 2-week ceasefire does not include Lebanon. Recent strike kills 8 people in southern Lebanon.
Oil prices crashed 14% within minutes as Trump announces ceasefire. Indian markets open higher.
And pro-government demonstrators in Iran, civilians across the country celebrate the defeat of US and Israel.
Draft tag in Sharif's X post now raises questions after social media users flag what appears to be an edited post on X. All right, viewers, the top focus at this hour. Now, the US President Donald Trump has announced a 2-week ceasefire with Iran, suspending military attacks and bombing just hours before a self-imposed deadline. Now, the deal here ties the ceasefire to Iran's commitment to reopen the strategic Strait of Hormuz, allowing a safe passage for ships.
Definitely, Iran has presented a 10-point proposal which Trump considers a workable basis for negotiations, including non-aggression, lifting of sanctions, and recognition of Iran's uranium enrichment program. Now, the agreement has led to a sharp drop in oil prices and a surge in global markets. So the markets have reacted, and there's a positivity which has come to the market after a lot of negativity, because markets run on sentiments, and also the prices of oil, the crude Brent, seems to normalize. 14% is a very good number in this case, because there was a bloodbath earlier in the global markets, the Asian markets, and also in the Indian markets, especially because of the ongoing war, because of the Strait of Hormuz being choked by the IRGC, because of the Strait of Hormuz being continuing to be a flashpoint, a war zone as declared by the IRGC. Now, as one of the points is opening the Strait of Hormuz, definitely this will impact the oil prices, and it has started showing up.
Right, of course, and now we're joined by 2 guests, retired Major General Rajan Kochar, defense expert, joins us, along with retired Major General G.D. Bakshi as well. Thank you to both of you for joining us on Republic TV. Major General G.D. Bakshi, coming to you first, we were discussing what exactly US gained out of this war. Now, the big question is, if it was not about regime change, what exactly was US objective, and did it achieve that at all?
Look, the objectives stated by the Trump administration were varying from day to day. From day one, they started with regime change, then it went on to nation-state destruction, then it went on to stopping nuclear enrichment, defanging Iran's nascent nuclear program, then it went to missiles. Iran would have to give up its no missiles more than 500 kilometers range. It would have to keep itself totally defenseless against all American and Israeli air attacks. And then it would have to cut off its ties, stop the support to its proxies of Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis. These were tantamount to surrender, most of these demands, and none of them have been met. There has been no regime change in Iran. To the contrary, the son of the Ayatollah, a much younger, far more hardline person, has taken charge as the supreme leader. If you call that regime change, it is a travesty of the truth. It is a monumental joke. Iran still has 450 kgs of enriched uranium. Iran, above all, has emerged much stronger because it now controls the Gulf of Hormuz. Militarily, it is virtually impossible to open the Gulf of Hormuz unless, as per the briefing given by Pentagon to Donald Trump and leaked to the Washington Post, America is prepared to put 200,000 troops on the ground for 18 months minimum, with estimated loss of about 15,000 casualties, American casualties.
Right, of course. So that's the whole thing that...
This, you know, the simple fact is, the simple fact is that this is a midterm election year. This war, especially the idea of putting boots on the ground, was extremely unpopular in the United States, and even the MAGA base, support base of Donald Trump was beginning to show major cracks. And therefore, Donald Trump had to accept reality. He has had to accept conditions which are far worse than what he was getting on 27th of February this year.
Right.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Major General Kocher also continues to be with us. Major General Kocher, my question to you would be, what will be the short-term impact and the long-term impact as an outcome of the war that continued? The short-term, definitely the loss of personnel, the loss of stockpiles of the missiles and the drones. But don't you think Iran will come out and emerge as a stronger player in the Middle East? It has proven its ground, and it has clearly proved that it is the ruler of the entire Middle East. It holds command, and it's stronger comparatively to any other Middle Eastern region, and all thanks to United States of America, sir.
That's a very interesting perspective you have brought out in the discussion here, because people must remember that Iran is not alone. And in case the rebuilding process, not only in terms of its own weaponry or military strength, it's also a loss and a destruction of the infrastructure which has been caused, which has to be rebuilt now. Bridges have been lost, hospitals have been attacked, a lot of civil areas have been attacked. Their missile launchers and missile sites, air defense systems, command and control systems. So there has been a substantial loss. So, and that is the reason the Strait of Hormuz has become a center of gravity of this entire war. As a matter of fact, I would call it as a masterstroke of strategy of Iran. Because of Strait of Hormuz, I think the United States has been brought, to its knees. So now we look at the future, because the short-term impact has been tremendous. So in the short term, I think possibly the rebuilding process will start, and especially when Iran is going to levy a tax on the movement of vessels in Strait of Hormuz, because that is one way of ensuring that the rebuilding process moves at a faster pace, because you need a budget for that. A second important aspect here is what Iran is actually looking for is the support of China, because China is going to play a very important role in the reconstruction of Iran. And China has the expertise. See, in 3 years, China can build a multi-storied building right from scratch. So that is the kind of expertise China will bring in here. And the entire geopolitics of this region is going to change, because that's a larger impact I see. Because on the Gulf countries, a strong feeling has come that United States is no longer the collective security provider of this region. They will tend to lose faith in the capabilities of the United States now. And slowly the reweaning of investment, especially in Dubai and all these areas which I see in UAE, a shift will take place. The industries will start moving out over a period of time. Remember, this ceasefire is not a very permanent solution. The problem still remains between Israel, US and Iran. This is only a temporary kind of a reprieve I see. I don't see this panning out to be a permanent solution or a permanent peace in this region, because this region will continue to remain volatile. And my last point is this ceasefire has happened on terms and conditions of Iran and not on the terms and conditions of the United States.
Definitely on the terms and conditions which have been given by Iran. That's why the question is whether it will be a long-term one, whether it will be a complete ceasefire. We have a big breaking news development coming in. This is coming from Israeli opposition leader who has called the ceasefire with Iran a political disaster. The Israeli opposition leader slams the ceasefire, calls the ceasefire with Iran a political disaster. So the opposition in Israel doesn't seem to be happy with the ceasefire. Many experts are also not happy with the ceasefire, because it will definitely make Iran stronger for a comeback and give it a chance, a window for making more weapons, for making more missiles in this case. All right, we have Major General G.D. Bakshi with us. General Bakshi, your take on the reaction of the opposition leader in this case. Should this ceasefire have taken place? It's not yet a ceasefire yet. It's a 2-week pause as we speak, sir.
Yes, it's a 2 weeks pause, but it was a pause dictated by a lot of global pressure onto the United States, more than global pressure, serious domestic pressure to stop this war. Right? So, I mean, you cannot countenance, you cannot take it out of the equation. Yes, there could be breakdowns of the ceasefire months down the line, years down the line, because the situation in the Middle East remains volatile. Israel had started this war because it simply felt that Iran, in its estimate, was at its weakest. And they wanted to, let's be straightforward, destroy Iran as a nation state so that it would not pose a serious life and death threat to Israel. Therefore, they wanted to ensure that no way could it go or acquire nuclear weapons. They wanted to also ensure that its missile arsenal was seriously curtailed and that they would not be allowed to have, missiles more than 500 kilometers range, and that they would have to disown all ties with their proxies of the Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis. All these were demands tantamount to surrender. Now, the Israelis are one of the best professional militaries in the world. The Mossad is one of the best intelligence agencies in the world. What I fail to understand is how could they have so grossly underestimated the military capability of Iran, its will to fight and stamina, its resilience in the face of regime change, a very serious regime change affects decapitation strikes, right?
Yes.
They had grossly underestimated Iran's resilience its mosaic strategy, its decentralization, which enabled it to survive the joint American-Israeli 40 days of the most brutal and lethal bombardment that we have seen in recent military history. But it failed to break Iran's will, and it failed to see how Iran would, horizontally escalate the conflict by widening the ambit to 9 more countries of the Persian Gulf, as far as Cyprus, as far as Diego Garcia. So there was horizontal escalation, but the biggest game changer was grabbing hold of the Gulf of Hormuz. Israel, instead of Israel being the local hegemon now, we are almost at a situation where Iran is the local oil hegemon. It can block, it has blocked 22% of the global supplies of the energy to the entire world. That was the game changer, because there was no way that you could militarily open the Straits of Hormuz. The United States by itself lacked the military capacity. It was asking the NATO allies to join in, which they have totally refused, because their simple point was, nobody asked us before starting the war, our inputs were not taken, our advice was not even sought for, and now we are being asked to commit our troops and to accept body bags, which they were not prepared to do.
Right. Certainly,
in
sir,
America, there was a strong perception that this is not our war, it is Israel's war. And there was resentment on that score.
All right.
Right, sir. There was certainly miscalculation on the part of US and Israel. They miscalculated, they underestimated Iran's capability in this. And we'll come back to both of you, sir, for further analysis. But we're getting some breaking news. UK's Prime Minister Starmer has welcomed the ceasefire agreement reached overnight. He says this will bring a moment of relief to the region and the world. Together with our partners, we must do all we can to support and sustain this ceasefire, turn it into a lasting agreement and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So we are looking at more and more world reactions now pouring in on the ceasefire, with this one coming in from UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who has welcomed the ceasefire deal, while also saying that we must do all we can at this point of time to ensure that this turns into a long and lasting agreement between the parties. So that's the statement coming in from Keir Starmer. He's now welcomed the ceasefire deal between Iran and US. Now, Major General Rajan Kochhar continues to stay with us. Major General Rajan Kochhar, I want to ask you, you were mentioning this, that GCC countries, they no longer trust the US as their net security provider. And we have seen after this conflict, Iran has certainly emerged more stronger with Hormuz under its shadow. Now, it knows that this leverage can be used wherever it wants, because it can hold the world economy to a choke point. It can block the Strait of Hormuz just whenever it wants. So in that regard, how do you look at now the change that could come in the security landscape of these Gulf countries? Because like Israel, even they did not want the war to end in this manner.
See, you have to look at things from two perspectives. The first perspective is that what has been the relation of these Gulf countries or these Arab Muslim countries with Iran? It is basically a love-hate relationship, because most of the countries, except for, if I can single out Qatar or Oman, none of them actually enjoy a good relationship with Iran. So whenever they decide that they don't need the United States here, they'll have to also consider this big brother attitude here, because these countries are so small that they have hardly any armies of note. You see, at the most, they have the money power, they have the economic power, they can buy the weapons, they can have a good air defense system in the country, but beyond that, they'll not be able to fight in the case of altercation with Iran. So they need some kind of a security in this area, and that's why in the short term, I don't see any of the air bases or military bases of the United States moving out from here. Maybe in the long term, some kind of a solution will have to be worked out by the GCC countries. I am of the opinion that GCC countries must get together, make a security pact among themselves, prohibiting any kind of a war between each other, and security guarantees need to be put in place. Only then I think the Gulf will decide, or the Gulf countries will decide that they don't need the US. Yeah. Second important aspect, which is emerging now is the role of China, because I'm trying to emphasize this again and again, because here is an opportunity which China is sensing now. In times to come, you see, China is already in Gwadar. Chabar port, a portion of the port is with China because it has an agreement with Iran. It is working on a Chabar port. In times to come, I see a greater presence of the PLA Navy as well as the PLA in Chabahar, because that is a very, very strategic move which China will play. China will play this move in parts. First, it will move into Iran in terms of reconstruction of Iran, because a lot of damage has been caused. And secondly, technology. China is already sharing with Iran the Baidu satellite systems and the missile technology and the missile material also to manufacture these missiles. Also, in terms of rare earth elements and magnets and semiconductors, all are coming from China. Yes. So China will like to expand its role in this region, and in times to come, I may be contested, but we can see a similar kind of presence which the US has in the Gulf countries. I won't be very far out to suggest that China also comes up with a kind of a military base in Iran, because if that happens, a kind of a security is there for Iran in case of a US attack, because a moment a US is going to attack, China will get affected, and then I think possibly the larger ramifications of the conflict will come into play. So these are some of the things. It may happen, may not happen. Time will tell, but possibilities are there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Major General Rajan Kochar and Major General G.D. Bakshi, thanks so much, sir, for joining us on Republic and sharing your inputs with us.
All right, viewers, we continue our coverage on the ceasefire, which has been achieved, a 2-week pause, which was achieved after a very long war that was fought 38 to 39 days. Now, this is US-Iran.
All right, viewers, now marking a possible end to the 39-day-long war across West Asia, US President Donald Trump announced a temporary and conditional 2-week ceasefire struck with Iran. Now, while this ceasefire, according to Trump, is broadly conditioned upon Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz, we are looking at the other side also putting up other claims. Now, in fact, Iran is saying that this ceasefire is a win for their country because of how Trump allegedly caved into their demands. Now, while US has not gone above acknowledging receiving an initiation, the 10-point proposal from Iran. More in this report.
After 39 long days of havoc and bloodbath, part of the Middle East war, US President Donald Trump took to social media announcing a temporary 2-week-long ceasefire. Amidst Trump's ceasefire announcement was one claim that said US had received Iran's 10-point proposal. This claim being something Iran boasted of too, of having Trump's cave in to Iran's demands for ceasefire. Iran's 10-point proposal entailed demands such as Israel and US curtailing its aggression and accepting Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. That's not all. Iran also urges for acceptance of uranium enrichment in the Farsi version of its ceasefire plan. Iran pushed for the lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions as was imposed by the US, especially amidst the war-resultant global economic and energy crisis, and termination of both UNSC and IAEA resolutions. Lastly, IRA stressed on how US and Israel must pay and compensate to Iran, while also seeking US combat forces to withdraw and back down. The additional cessation of war in Lebanon was also a demand put forth by Iran amidst the ceasefire negotiations. With this 10-point peace plan reportedly accepted, the US president has stepped down from earlier threats of expanding attacks on Iran, but also maintains this temporary ceasefire to be conditional on Iran honoring the ceasefire and reopening the Strait of Hormuz.
Coming up on the other side, Iran declares achieving historic win by forcing US to accept its 10-point proposal as Donald Trump declares ceasefire.
आर प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
Character, the taste of success.
प्यास बुझाए ठंडक लाए सबको भाए जीरा से MDH का जलजीरा जीरा से
जीरा से असली रिफ्रेशिंग, असली स्वाद, असली मजा।
MDH
Three, two, one. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundancy.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है
आलू चाट या फ्रूट चाट
स्वाद बनाए चमकी चाट।
क्या बात है स्वादिष्ट पकोड़े और फरसान अरे चंकी चाट है इसकी जान
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चंकी चाट।
केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे केसरिया से मन जोगी
हर पल बनाओ केसरी त्योहार विमल बोलो जुबान केसरी।
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद ये ही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा क्या स्वाद है अरे मेरे राजा।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for section of the excretion, which looks to be needing attention. But the crew in Artemis, they are well trained to handle such type of situation. And also, in case if the main chain of the excretion system doesn't respond, there is always a way of redundant chain and the methodology for excretion. And
from Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Live Report with me, Shavan Sen. 39 days into the war, finally a ceasefire has been called by United States of America. But is this going to be a lasting peace to begin with? Iran has already floated a 10-point peace program. Over the next couple of minutes, we're going to take you through all the details, all that has transpired through the night, and how exactly has the ceasefire been reached upon. All this and much more. But up first, let me take you through the headlines we're tracking at this hour. President Trump says golden age for Gulf. This after a ceasefire has been called. Israel calls it a disastrous deal. Opposition leader says Israel was not even on the negotiating table. As two-week ceasefire begins, the focus now shifts to vessels transiting through the Hormuz Strait. World welcomes ceasefire. A battered world finally hopes that this would be a long-standing peace. No direct negotiation between the United States of America and Iran. It is Pakistan which has been sending across messages to United States of America. India calls it that this is the Dalal history of Pakistan. Lebanon not part of the deal. That's what Israelis say as they continue to pound several infrastructure areas and projects in Israel. Eight people killed in Lebanon. This after the ceasefire that has been announced. Israel says Lebanon not a part of the ceasefire deal. After 39 days of war between America, Israel and Iran, with several lives that have been lost, a ceasefire deal has been worked upon. How fragile perhaps is this ceasefire to begin with? This comes at a time when President Trump had put up innumerous deadlines for Iran, hoping that the Strait of Hormuz, the strait that basically controls over 20% of the world oil, will finally be opened up. As markets have been soaring, there has been a response following the ceasefire announcement that has come in from President Trump early this morning. But how long will it really last? And has Iran really accepted the terms? More importantly, will the United States of America really accept the terms that have been set forth by the Iranians? A 10-point peace plan has been floating, has been doing the round, saying that this is coming from Iran. As far as attacks are concerned, it seems that there has been a military pause, perhaps, if not a ceasefire at this stage. While the world has certainly welcomed this move that has been made, but can the Americans really be trusted? And more importantly, what's the roadmap like? The biggest, perhaps, the talking point through this entire war has been the Strait of Hormuz. It has perhaps been the trump card for the Iranians, putting pressure on the Americans to take a final call. Given the fact that oil prices have been soaring, Brent crude price has crossed over $100 per barrel, putting perhaps the prices over the top. Now, keeping that in mind, what we have essentially seen is that this has been the negotiating term for the Iranians. Today, the Iranians say that there is going to be a fee that is going to be imposed for all vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Not just that, they also see an opportunity to make the demand that sanctions that were imposed by United States of America, that should be lifted. Will the Americans really accept it? This comes at a time when we have essentially seen that the Americans have been non-stop threatening the Iranians. On the one hand, Vice President J.D. Vance had already indicated that they are negotiating well with the Iranians. You had at the same moment, President Trump using expletives threatening Iranians, saying that if at all there is no deal, then he is going to bomb the hell out of Iran. Not just that, he also went a step further by stating that an entire civilization will die tonight. Now, that is what President Trump had said, but this morning, things have changed. A ceasefire has been put in place. For 2 weeks, there is a ceasefire. How exactly will the ceasefire really look like? And more importantly, whether at all it is going to hold. First, I want to bring in my colleague Ishita, who's joining us from the studio, to give us a sense of what's the current traffic like, the maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, what has really worked for the Iranians at this stage, and who exactly will be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Over to you, Ishita.
Right, of course, so Shravan, we have seen a Strait of Hormuz, which is the economic corridor through which about 20% of the oil passes, has become the bone of contention. But now, as per the agreement which has been struck between US and Iran for this 2-week pause, we're looking at opening up of this Strait of Hormuz. Now, viewers, as you can see on both, this is essentially the Strait of Hormuz. As you can see on both the sides, you have ships which have been stranded there for the past 4 weeks. Now, these ships will be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but it could take, if not months, at least several weeks for the oil traffic to now normalize and to go back where it was, in fact, before the war began. Now, you can see Iran's coastline along the Strait of Hormuz, and this is why, essentially, why IRGC will be maintaining, in fact, effective control over this economic corridor, while according to the latest Trump statement, he also says, quote unquote, that US, in fact, will be hanging around to ensure that this goes well, which means we will be looking at US troops presence as well to ensure that there is safe passage through Strait of Hormuz. Now, one important point is the fact that this is essentially the Strait of Hormuz, and at its narrowest point, it's just about 33 kilometers wide, which means even if it is open immediately, the traffic, the time it will take for the traffic to mobilize or to stabilize, in fact, for that matter, it will take several months for the oil flow to go where it was before the war began. Back to you, Shravan.
Well, in fact, that's the condition right now at the Strait of Hormuz. I'm going to now take you through what many would say is the rhetoric of President Trump. Several deadlines. We have seen several deadlines being imposed by President Trump threatening Iranians that they need to open up a Strait of Hormuz, and that has certainly changed. On your screens right now, I'm going to take you through all the deadlines that were basically brought in by President Trump, which essentially started from 21st of March, where he had basically threatened to hit power plants in 48 hours if Hormuz wasn't opened. 12 hours before the deadline, he ended up saying that very good and productive conversations were taking place. Let's move to 26th of March. 26th of March, he said that they better get serious. There is no turning back. Now, on 26th of March itself, just about a few hours later, he extended the deadline to 10 more days. Then comes 30th of March, when he said, open Hormuz immediately or we'll blow up plants. Now that is on 30th of March. Let's move to 30th of March where he said that. And there was nothing that really happened thereafter. And 2nd of April, he said time left for Iran to make a deal before it's too late. Now that's what he said on 2nd of April. Then he goes on 4th of April, time is basically running out, 48 hours before hell rains down. That was on 4th of April. Let's move on to 5th of April when he said, open the strait or you will be living in hell. Then on 6th of April, he said the deadline of 7th of April is final. Iran can be taken out in one night. And finally, 7th of April, when he said, make a deal or whole civilization will die tonight. What do we really make of this? Ambassador Prabhu Dayal is joining us on this broadcast. Ambassador, thank you very much. First, I want to begin by asking you, what do you really make of this announcement? A 2-week, many would say this is more like a military pause. Help us understand, can this so-called ceasefire really hold?
Well, you know, I agree with you that this is just a temporary truce. It can't really amount to a treaty or an agreement to end the war. But nonetheless, there are signs that there are possibilities of diplomatic negotiations which will take place, and therefore there could be some opening of the doors. Nonetheless, at the moment, the negotiations which will take place appear to be facing a very challenging road ahead. This is because there is a huge difference between the respective points of view of the United States and Iran. Now, you referred to the 10-point plan which Iran has put forward. Now, this plan includes certain conditions which the US is not likely to accept. For instance, the plan speaks of security guarantees. It says that what Iran wants is a formal commitment from the US to ensure that there are no further acts of aggression against Iran. Now, the US is not going to accept that. Then, the second point there is the permanent peace aspect, because what Iran wants is a permanent end to the war rather than a short-term ceasefire. This, again, is something that the US is not going to agree to. You know, the war was waged to curb Iran's nuclear capability. And the third point in the plan which the Iranians have put forward is that the US should recognize Iran's right to uranium enrichment under the NPT. I don't think the US is at all inclined to agree to let the Iranians enrich uranium at all. Then there is, of course, this requirement which the Iranians have posed of lifting primary sanctions. They want all primary sanctions on Iran to be lifted, as also the secondary sanctions, which have been affecting third parties. Now, I don't think the United States is going to lift these sanctions. Then again, you know, the Iranians have demanded that there should be the termination of all UN Security Council resolutions against Iran, as also the termination of all International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors resolutions. I don't think this is going to happen at all. The US is not going to agree to these resolutions being terminated. Then, of course, Iran has been damaged considerably. It has suffered a colossal amount of damage. And so one of the conditions it has put forward is that there should be the payment of damages or compensation by the US for reconstruction costs, which will be incurred. I don't think the United States will be paying reparations or giving compensation to Iran. Of course, one important point is the US withdrawal. The US withdrawal from all regional bases. Now, the Gulf Arab states may try and pressurize the US to wind up its bases because in this particular conflict, they got embroiled just because the US has bases and used them to attack Iran. But nonetheless, I don't think the US will be at all willing to wind up its bases. Then above all, the most important point is regional de-escalation, because Iran wants the hostilities to stop across all fronts, which includes the Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Now, Israel is not a party to these negotiations or the ceasefire. In fact, Israel has continued to attack Iran and vice versa. So the question of ending the strikes in Lebanon against the Hezbollah is something that Israel will resist strongly. So as I see it, there are very big challenges ahead, but nonetheless, it's a welcome sign that there have been some positive developments and that there is a strategic pause because of which there is at the moment a prevention of further escalation. There is the reopening of the energy supply routes. There is the opening of the diplomatic pathway. And there is something that gives some sort of relief or financial relief to the world, because as I observe from the media reports, the stock market prices have gone up, which shows that the sense of global disappointment in what was happening in the financial world seems to be easing, and the financial world is hopeful of better times.
As far as objectives are concerned, perhaps military objectives may have been fulfilled. The political objective hasn't been fulfilled as yet. Keeping that in mind, and also the situation that we see right now, particularly with the markets in complete doldrums, do you believe that this is more of a strategic pause to get things reset so that the Americans can regroup and perhaps carry out what many believe the final assault?
That is what the Iranians are thinking. In fact, their media has been speaking about this matter, that Iran should be very careful, because while the Americans may be talking in terms of a 2-week ceasefire, but going by past experience, it is difficult to believe them. Moreover, President Trump has become quite well known for saying something one day and doing something quite different the next day. So there is a lot of unpredictability which comes into play, particularly everything to do with Donald Trump remains very unpredictable. So I don't know whether this ceasefire will hold or whether it will break very soon. But at the moment, there does seem to be some degree of hope in what is happening, because particularly the reopening of the Hormuz is something that everybody wants very dearly.
Ambassador, I just want to put out some information that we got by speaking to the Iranians earlier today. And as I understand that even today, there is no direct negotiation between the Iranians and US. As far as Pakistan's role is concerned, it more acts like a catalyst at this point in time, sending across messages. So it seems that a final messaging was essentially done by the Iranians through Pakistan and to United States of America. So even today, as I understand, this so-called ceasefire does not have both the warring parties on the negotiating table. Israel was not even on the negotiating table. So at least some of the key stakeholders are concerned, they were not even on the negotiating table. Pakistan is essentially trying to project themselves that they've been able to get the warring nations together, but it seems that they've only been the messenger, the pigeon here sending one message to the other. And that's the latest details that we are putting out. Ambassador, if both the nations, the warring nations, have not been on the negotiating table, then what kind of a ceasefire are we really talking about?
Well, as you mentioned, Pakistan has been a messenger. It's been like a postman. And if we look carefully at the tweet by Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, it opens with the word draft. That indicates that it is a text which was sent to Pakistan by someone, and who else is that someone but the Americans? So Pakistan is clearly acting at the behest of the Americans. It's trying to send across a message which the Americans want to Iran, and probably relaying the messages back from Iran to America. But nonetheless, we come to the question which you mentioned, the one pertaining to Israel. Now, there is no trust whatsoever between, firstly, Israel and Iran, and secondly, also between Israel and Pakistan. You know, Pakistan has not recognized Israel. Pakistan does not have diplomatic relations with Israel. And the Israelis have no trust whatsoever in anything which the Pakistanis are trying to do in regard to this particular conflict. So, will the Israelis play along? I very much doubt so. However, there is also some degree of distrust between Iran and Pakistan. Because if we recall, Pakistan signed a mutual defense agreement with Saudi Arabia last year. And Saudi Arabia has also got embroiled in this conflict. It is now a party to the conflict. So what the Pakistanis are trying to do is being viewed with some degree of caution by the Iranians, because they don't trust the Pakistanis so much. Of course, if the Pakistanis are trying to mediate in the sense that they are trying to convey messages from America to Iran and vice versa, then probably that degree of mediation is acceptable. But it doesn't mean that Iran is going to let Pakistan decide the terms or try to influence it in any manner whatsoever. Because, as I said, there is a lot of mistrust, firstly, between Iran and Pakistan. There's also a greater mistrust between Israel and Pakistan. And Israel is a big party to this conflict. Israel has not agreed to the ceasefire.
Ambassador Dayal, thank you very much for putting this into perspective. It does appear to be a fragile ceasefire this moment, but one will have to wait and watch to see how the world really responds. So far, in terms of the responses that have really come in from the world, they've all welcomed the fact that at least there is a strategic pause at this stage. Whether at all this is going to last for long is something that one has to wait and watch. But the markets have already responded. In fact, it is doing much better than what we have seen in the last few weeks. We'll go to the market numbers in a short while from now. But I want to now take you through how exactly has the world really responded. A world which has been maintaining that this is a war of the Americans, not a war for them. Starting from Britain to all the way to Australia, all of them had one thing to say: this is not our war. This is how the world responded.
Nations across Asia and the Pacific are welcoming the announcement of a 2-week pause in the war between Iran and the US. Just before Donald Trump's deadline came to an end. In Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Foreign Minister Penny Wong issued a joint statement saying they welcome the agreement and have a long call for de-escalation. The Australian government stressed its continued collaboration with international partners to ensure the safe flow of critical supplies to those most in need. Japan also expressed optimism with its chief cabinet secretary, describing the ceasefire announcement as a positive development. While in New Zealand, Foreign Minister Winston Peters welcomed the effort to end hostilities. Peters noted that while the news is encouraging, significant work remains in the coming days to secure a lasting ceasefire. Regional governments are closely monitoring the situation, emphasizing diplomacy and stability in one of the world's most critical energy corridors. The 2-week pause now offers a window for negotiations that could ease tensions and stabilize energy markets.
Facing the mighty army of United States of America and Israel was Iran. In fact, many thought that Iran is going to collapse like a pack of cards, but that did not happen. In the last 39 days, if one thing has certainly emerged is that of a resilient Iran. Whether at all there has been a regime change or not, it is for everyone to witness. There hasn't been a regime change. Has the military been battered? Yes. The top IRGC commanders and the political leadership in Iran has certainly taken a hit. But despite that, Iran continued to respond to all the threats that came in from United States of America as well as Israel. Where do they really stand as far as this war is concerned? Now, with large number of their infrastructure taking a massive hit, Iran still continues to fight. This is how Iran responded to the ceasefire announcement.
After being on the receiving end of US and Israeli strikes for 40 days, a 2-week peace plan is now in effect across Iran. However, hours after the ceasefire was made public, thousands of Iranians turned up on the streets of Tehran on Wednesday morning. They raised slogans in Farsi and Arabic. They shouted "Death to America," "Death to Israel," and "War until victory." They also raised placards while crowding Tehran for a protest, one of which read, "No compromise, no apology, battle with America." Iranians remain apprehensive and skeptical of the 2-week peace deal. They demand a Security Council resolution.
قابل اعتماد نیست. قابل اعتماد نیست. تا قطعنامه نشه شورای امنیت تصویب نکنه و این خسارات واده نشه اصلا قابل اعتماد نیست. نه بنده نه ملت ایران این قبول نداره.
The protesters also burnt American and Israeli flags. The loud chants by the protesters sparked concerns even among the organizers, who tried to calm the protesters, but in vain. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also welcomed the peace deal. He called on all parties to abide by the terms of the ceasefire in order to pave the way towards a lasting and comprehensive peace in the region.
Whoa.
After being bombarded for 40 days, Iranians get a 2-week reprieve for life to return to normal.
That's all that we could pack in this edition of Live Report. News and updates continue on the other side of this commercial break.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 11th year, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
आलू चाट या फ्रूट चाट,
स्वाद बढ़ाए चमकी चाट।
क्या बात है? स्वादिष्ट पकोड़े और फरसान, अरे चमकी चाट है इसकी जान।
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चमकी चाट।
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद, यही तो है इसकी खास बार। वाओ मम्मा, क्या स्वाद है? अरे मेरे राजा।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for suction of the excretion.
Our pure Shahi Paneer Masala. Delicious, healthy, every day.
Character, the taste of success.
प्यास बुझाए, ठंडक लाए, सबको भाए जीरा सिम। MDH का जल जीरा, जीरा सिम।
जीरा सिम, असली रिफ्रेशिंग, असली स्वाद, असली मजा।
MDH।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that
Donald Trump terms the peace deal as the beginning of golden age for the entire Middle East. Israeli opposition leader criticizes the deal, terms it as a political disaster. As two-week ceasefire begins, the focus now shifts to vessels transiting the Hormuz Strait. And also, nations across the globe welcome peace deal on Iran. Pakistan's role in peace deal between US and Iran emerges as Islamabad is set to hold a high-level meet. Israeli PM says Lebanon not part of peace deal. Israeli PM has said Lebanon not part of peace deal as strikes across southern Lebanon continues. 8 killed in southern Lebanon as strikes continue to escalate. We're getting a big breaking news development. And now this is from RBI reality check on Iran war. Inflation creeps in, growth slows as war impacts economy. This is from the Reserve Bank of India. Now against the backdrop of an uncertain geopolitical scenario, now this is the reality check. RBI offers the reality check on US Israel-Iran war. That was ongoing, but there is a temporary 2 weeks pause, a temporary ceasefire. Against the backdrop of an uncertain geopolitical scenario, the RBI prudently chose to be patient instead of being reactionary in its policy today, kept in stance and the policy rate unchanged. There's the very big development that is coming in from the RBI. The policy tone was balanced and wait and watch, abstaining from indicating any hawkishness. Now, as we expected, no extreme or out-of-box measures were announced at this meeting, at this point. RBI MPC meeting 2026, where Reserve Bank of India Governor Sanjay Malhotra-led Monetary Policy Committee has kept announced that repo rate has been kept unchanged at the present 5.25%. Now, let's listen in to the governor.
And the disruption in global supply chains. Before the outbreak of the West Asia conflict, India's macroeconomic fundamentals exuded confidence, with buoyant growth and low inflation. Conditions, however, turned adverse in March with the widening of the conflict zone and its intensification. The fundamentals of the Indian economy are on a stronger footing at the current juncture than it was in previous crisis episodes, as well as relative to many other economies. Today, and the disruption in global supply chains. Before the outbreak of the West Asia conflict, India's macroeconomic fundamentals exuded confidence, with buoyant growth and low inflation. Conditions, however, turned adverse in March with the widening of the conflict zone and its intensification. The fundamentals of the Indian economy are on a stronger footing at the current juncture than it was in previous crisis episodes, as well as relative to many other economies.
All right, we have Pranav joining us from the digital newsroom for more updates on this. Now, this was definitely an RBI reality check on the war. There is a temporary ceasefire, Pranav, not a full ceasefire. There is a 2-week pause, and RBI chose to wait and watch and be prudent. No change in repo rate. More details, please.
Well, absolutely. In fact, RBI said that the stance going forward is neutral, and it has kept the repo rate unchanged while revising some of the forecasts, some important forecasts, such as inflation forecast to 4.6% and GDP growth forecast to 4.9%. Remember, India's GDP was expected to grow between about 6.5 to 7.1%, but it's now on the 6.9%, which is towards the lower end of the spectrum, given that the West Asia conflict has hampered supply routes and oil prices. In fact, the Reserve Bank of India governor specifically mentioned, even in the press conference that he just addressed a few minutes ago, that Indian economy's fundamentals are strong. India's numbers are resilient, and more so when compared to its global peers. So yes, the confidence in Indian economy is reflected, the confidence in Indian numbers are reflected, but then numbers are obviously tweaked. Remember, RBI's inflation outlook, or the target for inflation, was between 2 to 4%, but what we could be staring at is 4.6%, and that's primarily one of the reasons why RBI has kept the repo rate unchanged.
Yeah, definitely. Pranav, if you can do a comparative analysis, with the global markets, how they reacted to the entire war scenario and how India reacted, and also inflation is creeping in not just for India but for the global markets. The threat is looming for the global scenario for all the countries across the globe. Where is India placed? A comparative analysis on that, please.
Well, if we talk specifically about the markets, Indian markets are quite in line with the global peers. In fact, all the Asian markets are currently up. As far as the Asian markets are concerned, Australia is up, Nikkei is up, Hong Kong, Shanghai are both trading up in the range of about 2 to 6%. So Indian markets are quite in line with the global peers. As far as inflation outlook is concerned, in fact, India was one of the hardest hit economies, given its over dependence on oil coming from West Asia. Remember, the input costs are likely to affect the oil costs. In fact, are expected to affect the input costs of India Inc. As a result of which, in fact, the RBI governor also said that the shock could be felt over the next few months as oil prices normalize. So we are looking at a big decision boosting the confidence of Indian investors, Indian policymakers, but at the same time, the impact is likely to be felt in the next few months, and it's far from over as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, Pranav, so this should be considered as something of something temporary in this case. Won't be having a long-term impact. And primarily this was due to the high energy costs because there was a virtual blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this has not just impacted India, but impacted China and all those countries who were dependent on oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So should we consider this is something that is temporary and will recover in the coming days, in the coming months?
Well, we spoke to a few analysts today, and what we are understanding is that currently the market is looking at it in a positive way. Whether this sustains remains one of the important factors. The second important factor is whether oil prices really hold and they really come down as within the stipulated range or the base range that the RBI considers. And the third most important factor is whether the other costs that have mounted in the in the Strait of Hormuz, primarily the insurance costs, if they come down over the next few months, we will have to wait and see how these factors play out in order to actually, derive as to whether this move in the markets or this positive bounce in the markets continues or it is just a blip that might reverse with yet another tweet from Donald Trump or yet another decision from the West Asian zone.
All right, thanks a lot for the updates on how the world is reacting, the global markets, the Indian markets, and what the RBI said. The repo rate remains unchanged. Thanks a lot, Pranav. All right, viewers, now let's move on to another big breaking news development that we are getting right now. And this is from the Middle East. The key bridge between Saudi Arabia and Bahrain reopens. This is the King Fahd Causeway, a key bridge linking Saudi Arabia and the island kingdom of Bahrain, which reopened on Wednesday morning, that is today, after an hours-long closure over possible incoming fire from Iran because there was a threat from Iran. The King Fahd Causeway Authority said in its announcement on that vehicle traffic has resumed. So vehicle traffic has resumed in that bridge. The King Fahd Causeway connecting Saudi Arabia and Bahrain has reopened following a brief closure. And this is a very big development. It is a critical bridge linking Saudi Arabia to the island nation of Bahrain. And it has been recently reopened. It followed a temporary closure on April 7, 2026 related to regional security. And this was reported a very important bridge, key bridge, and it was closed due to threat of an attack, a missile attack, and now this is open. Big development. The bridge remains open now. Opened after a day, the King Fahd Causeway, which connects the Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, has been reopened following a brief closure. There was a brief closure while the rebuild of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore is currently scheduled to open at late 2030. Now, this is a very big development. King Fahd Causeway connecting Saudi and Bahrain. The critical bridge linking Saudi to Bahrain has recently reopened, followed a temporary closure on April 7th. Big development and big sigh of relief, and the traffic has resumed. All right, viewers, now let's move on to another top news. Now, US President Donald Trump has agreed to a two-week ceasefire, a two-week pause, on the condition that Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this agreement comes after the president threatened Iran with the death of its entire civilization on Tuesday morning. Now, according to reports, the move follows a last-minute diplomatic intervention led by Pakistan. More in this report.
US President Donald Trump agreed to a two-week ceasefire just hours before the deadline he had set for Iran to capitulate, warning that otherwise a whole civilization will die tonight. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif invited American and Iranian leaders to Islamabad on Friday to further negotiate a long-term peace solution. Trump, in his post, announced that he's holding off to ramp up attacks on Iran and credits the 10-point proposal put forward by the Islamic regime and calls it a workable basis on which to negotiate. The two-week ceasefire plan includes allowing Iran to charge fees on ships transiting through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf. With the ceasefire agreement in place, both the US and Iran have ordered its military to halt all offensive strikes in the region. The world watches on as the agreement comes in a time when global oil prices surge and looks on at what the following negotiations will unfold.
An airstrike in the middle of the road in Al-Duwair, southern Lebanon, has targeted civilians. Now, strikes on Lebanon continues amidst US confirming to Israel that Lebanon was not covered under the ceasefire. This was one of the 10 points which was forwarded by Iran, the 10-point plan, but Israel has not agreed to it. And Israel promptly launched attacks on Lebanon, including bombing an ambulance, as per the claims, as per the reports, where 8 people were killed in that attack. So, attack continues, an airstrike in the middle of the road in Al-Duwair, which is southern Lebanon, being targeted, and especially civilians, the casualties involved civilians. Strikes on Lebanon continues amidst US confirming to Israel that Lebanon was not covered under the ceasefire, and Israel promptly launched attacks on Lebanon, including bombing an ambulance, killing at least 8. Now, the opposition leader had also reacted in Israel against the ceasefire. They were not happy with the ceasefire and the terms and conditions of the ceasefire. Most of them are saying that the ceasefire conditions, the 2-week pause conditions, the 10-point plan is favoring Iran more rather than US or Israel in this case, because they will continue to enrich uranium and they will continue their control of the Strait of Hormuz. And also the mention of Lebanon and Hezbollah primarily is a major concern for the Israeli government, and the opposition in Israel has already reacted. And while it was declared, the 2-week pause was declared, the ceasefire was declared, the airstrikes in the middle of the road can be seen. This is the visual, this is the exact visual. First on Republic on your television screen, as you can see, an airstrike in the middle of the road in Al-Duwair, southern Lebanon, which allegedly targeted civilians. Now, strikes on Lebanon continues amidst US confirming to Israel that Lebanon was not covered under the ceasefire, and Israel promptly launched attacks on Lebanon, including allegedly bombing an ambulance, killing at least 8 people in that bombing. These are the visuals which are coming from southern Lebanon. You can clearly see the skyline and the plume of smoke, fire. This happens after the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, bombs southern Lebanon. Beirut has been targeted. Southern Lebanon has been targeted. Hezbollah, the organization's headquarters have been targeted. The strongholds have been targeted by the Israeli Defense Forces, the strikes which were conducted by the IDF. Now, these are the visuals where there was a strike at the road, in the middle of the road in Al-Duwair, southern Lebanon. Now, allegedly, civilians were targeted in this strike. Civilians include the casualties which have been reported, which includes an ambulance. So as per the reports that we are fetching, allegedly an ambulance was bombed, which killed at least 8. However, IDF refrains from collateral damage and refrains from attacking civilians in most of its strikes, but this has been reported. These are the fresh updates that we are receiving. Allegedly, an ambulance had been struck, killing at least 8 people. All right, viewers, now let's move on to another top story. Now, US oil prices fell sharply just as US President Donald Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire in the Iran war, just hours before his deadline. Now, the ceasefire was put in place with the agreement that the strategic Strait of Hormuz will be open and safe passage will be given to ships. More in this special report.
Oil prices plunged sharply after US President Donald Trump agreed to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks in exchange for Tehran allowing safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Before the ceasefire, Brent crude futures spiked to about $120 per barrel, and US WTI oil climbed similarly, one of the highest levels since the year 2008. On news of Trump's conditional ceasefire, Brent fell about 14% to a $93 to $95 per barrel, and the US WTI dropped by a similar 14 to 15%, a strong reversal from the recent highs. International benchmark Brent for June delivery lost more than 15% to a $92 per barrel. Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi said Tehran will allow safe passage through the Strait during the ceasefire with coordination from Iran's armed forces and with due consideration to technical limitations. The president had threatened to bomb every bridge and power plant in Iran if the leaders did not meet that deadline. The US has received a 10-point proposal from Iran that is a workable basis for negotiations, while Iran received a 15-point plan from the US earlier. Trump said the two-week ceasefire was subject to Iran agreeing to a complete and immediate safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, viewers, now let's move on to another big breaking news development that we are getting as we speak. Now, India is set to receive Iranian oil this week. Very big development. India will be receiving Iranian oil this week. Its first purchase in 7 years after the US temporarily removed sanctions on Iranian oil and refined products to ease supply shortages. Ship tracking data from Isaac and Kepler showed on Wednesday that India's oil ministry last week said that refiners have purchased Iranian oil amid the Middle East conflict that has disrupted supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. Ladies and gentlemen, as you remember, this was allowed by United States of America, that countries can now buy Iranian oil while they were at war with Iran. And they said that only the oil that was stranded at sea will be allowed to be purchased now. And Iranians also were making fun of the Americans, that there's no ship stranded in the sea. All right, we have Shivangi from the newsroom for more details on this. Shivangi, so the Iranian oil has been allowed by the US that you can purchase Iranian oil. Now, this is the first time that India will be receiving Iranian oil after a very long gap. More details, please.
That is right. This is very important to note, of course. One point is, like you mentioned, it's after 7 years. That means since 2018, 2019, this is the first time that Iranian oil is on its way to India. Also, the bigger context, of course, we saw a global energy crisis all over the world because of the situation in the Middle East, Shivam. So this is a big shift coming in. It's also a big geopolitical shift. But apart from the shipments which will be coming, it's very important to note that how India has navigated this very sensitive time. So India has hedged the energy risk very smartly. We have seen how India has kept its options open now by having different supplies for its energy needs. So that's something we had pointed out. We also see that the disruptions in Hormuz, of course, have created a big risk for India. However, because India has diversified, we see that this is a possibility, that India is keeping all its options open to make sure that its energy supplies are not disrupted. Also, speaking a little bit more about how India has managed, to make sure that it's prioritized its energy security. We have seen that India is making sure that it is negotiating with everybody on the table. We have seen India really maintain that thin diplomatic line. Of course, India is managing the diplomacy with US, with Iran and other players, showing that India keeps its interests first before joining any particular bloc, especially when it comes to its citizens. So this is a very important geopolitical shift. It's a very important shift when it comes to India's energy crisis that we have seen. Of course, now the oil prices are going down. We see a little bit of ease there because of the ceasefire. But as for India, India's played this very well. And now we will see Iranian oil shipments coming through very soon. Well, back to you, Shivangi.
All right, Shivangi, thanks a lot for the updates on the story. Now, let's move on and get you another big breaking news development. Ladies and gentlemen, another big news coming in. This is Defense Minister Rajnath Singh to hold a meeting with a group of ministers at around 3 p.m. in Kartavya Bhavan. Big breaking news development. Meeting of the group of ministers will be chaired by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. The meeting will be held at Kartavya Bhavan at around 3 p.m. This is a very crucial meeting, ladies and gentlemen, following the Israel-Iran conflict, the US-Iran conflict, and primarily the crisis in West Asia will be discussed. This definitely is a big sigh of relief for all the countries across the globe, and especially for India also, because of the rising oil prices and the threat in the entire region as the Strait of Hormuz continued to be a war zone. Now this meeting will be held at 3 p.m. All right, we have Ishan with us for more details in this story. Ishan, if you can put this into perspective, what exactly will be the agenda of discussion? And if you can share more details of the meeting, Ishan, over to you.
This is the third IGOM that will take place. That is the informal group of ministers meeting. Yep. Now, the IGOM was formed by Rajnath Singh to keep a close eye and keep a close watch with all the ministries and stakeholders involved to monitor the West Asia conflict. Now, India imports roughly 2 million barrels of oil per day. Most of it transits Hormuz, and that was severely affected by the closure of the Strait. India has been navigating the entire thing. And now the informal group of ministers, which is chaired by Minister Rajnath Singh, will meet and discuss the remedies and the current situation. Now, last night we saw that there was an escalation, and now we also saw that now there is a talk of a ceasefire, 2-week moratorium period, and both parties have presented their demands or the list of things that they would like to discuss. And this 2-week period is a ease on the tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be passage of ships, and resources crunch will definitely reduce, and the pressure on the government will definitely reduce. And this will also be a very important for the energy security update. The volumes will increase, and apart from all of this, the most important part is that the 3 service chiefs will report on the force posture and missile defense readiness and contingency plans for protection of Indian vessels and diaspora in the Gulf. And all of this will be discussed during this particular meeting, as was done in the previous 2 meetings. This entire process of discussion is to involve all the stakeholders and keep everybody updated on what the current situation is, so that the government can best tackle the difficulties or the challenges that lie ahead. Back to you.
All right, Ishan, thanks a lot for the details in this story. Well, it appears it's time to slip into a short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. Coming up next, Israeli PM says Lebanon not part of peace deal as strikes across southern Lebanon continues. And also 8 killed in the strikes in Lebanon, where an ambulance was allegedly struck.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 11th year, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
सैंडविच, लस्सी और छाछ
हर घूंट में चमकी चाट, ड्राई फ्रूट और दही बड़े।
चमकी चाट से स्वाद बढ़े।
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चमकी चाट।
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो, मिलाओ और खाओ।
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है, सबका राजा हार्डवेयर मसाला।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद, यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मम्मा, क्या स्वाद है। अरे मेरे राजा, सबका राजा और मसाला।
केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे, दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे। केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ।
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल,
बोलो जुबान केसरी। चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
सैंडविच लस्सी और छाछ
हर घूंट में चमकी चाट। अब बताओ स्वाद आया?
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चंकी चाट।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for suction of the excretion, which looks to be needing attention. But the crew in Artemis, they are well trained to handle such type of situation. And also, in case if the main chain of the excretion system doesn't respond, there is
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Hello and welcome. You're watching live and breaking on Republic TV with me, Ishita Mitra. Now, viewers, Donald Trump has announced a 2-week pause in the ongoing Iran conflict, saying that golden age will now return to Middle East. We'll get you all the updates on that and what's happening in the election-bound states. All that lined up ahead for you. But first up, a quick check at the headlines. Donald Trump terms the peace deal with Iran as the beginning of golden age for Middle East. Israeli opposition leader criticizes a US-Iran deal, terms it as a political disaster. As 2-week ceasefire begins, the focus now shifts to vessels transiting to the Hormuz Strait. Nations across the world welcome the 2-week temporary ceasefire deal on Iran. Pakistan's role in peace deal between US and Iran emerges as Islamabad all set to hold a high-level meet. Israeli Prime Minister says Lebanon not part of the peace deal as strikes across the southern part of the Lebanon continue, with the latest killing at least 8. At least 8 killed in the latest strikes conducted in southern Lebanon by IDF. All right, viewers, beginning with the election-bound state of Tamil Nadu, now actor turned politician and TVK chief Vijay is in fact holding a campaign. We'll get you the live visuals of his campaigning as top leaders are now hitting the streets ahead of Tamil Nadu elections. And this time it's the actor turned politician TVK chief of Vijay, who's now in fact holding campaign on the streets. In fact, we'll get you visuals from his campaign that's now intensified. It is the TVK chief and the candidate from Tiruchirappalli East and Perambur Assembly constituency that's now campaigning and hitting the streets. In fact, we'll get you the visuals on your screen. These are visuals from Thoothukudi. This is where actor turned politician and TVK chief Vijay is holding its political campaign. Now we're looking at top leaders hitting the streets as we inch closer to the D-Day in Tamil Nadu. Elections are just
around the corner on 23rd April. And ahead of that, we're looking at campaign, in fact, intensifying. All the political leaders hitting the campaign trail, with TVK Chief Vijay also now holding a mega rally, as in fact he's about to contest from two constituencies of Perambur East and Tiruchirappalli. We're looking at the TVK Chief now hitting the campaign trail, with campaigning intensifying on ground as we inch closer to the polling day in the election-bound state of Tamil Nadu. Now, TVK is in fact a crucial player in the upcoming elections. It could emerge as the kingmaker between AIA, DMK, as well as a DMK on either side. And we're looking at top leaders, including Vijay, now hitting the campaign trail with the on-ground campaigning intensifying as one inches closer to the D-Day. We're getting you visuals of a TVK rally. Vijay, on your screen, you can see leading, in fact, the rally for his party, as he's about to contest from two constituency of Perambur East and Tiruchirappalli. Now, viewers, TVK as a player is a crucial one. In fact, in the upcoming election, it could emerge as a third big player and also the kingmaker in Tamil Nadu. Now, if we compare to the last elections, AIA DMK numbers versus DMK, it was a very close contest. And now TVK, as it enters the Tamil Nadu election in the fray, it could emerge as the third big player. My colleague Sharda now joins me. Sharda, give us more details about TVK rally, the big rally underway right now, with Vijay, in fact, leading the campaign.
Well, the last 2 days, TVK's Vijay's campaign was cancelled in the city capital, Chennai, in regards to the time, because the time that they asked for 3 hours and only 1 hour was permission was given. However, a mega rally is being conducted today in the south of Tamil Nadu, the Thoothukudi and the Tirunelveli belt, the delta, below the delta belt, which is mostly consisted of the caste-based oaths. While in Thoothukudi now, Vijay, as you see on the visuals, Vijay has just left from the airport on his way, has done a rally, and is also reached the location where he is doing a public meet following the road rally. After this, he is also set to go to another parts of Thoothukudi and Tirunelveli. Multiple stops have been planned for the accredited politician Vijay. So TVK is making a mega campaign today after his nominations were selected yesterday in both the constituencies, which is Perambur and Trichy East. So TVK is now going big on the road rallies and the campaigns. Earlier, multiple permissions were cancelled by the Tamil Nadu police. However, now TVK has a plus point with the nominations being accepted. It's only the Election Commission through the app who has to mention that the permission's been cleared. So now TVK leader Vijay will be going on a campaign all around the state. And as you just mentioned, last time in 2021, it was only a fight between the DMK and the AIADMK. But now TVK is coming in majorly to make a huge break into this traditionally split oath. So whether TVK's Vijay will win in any of these constituencies that he's contesting from, or whether his party will bring in a major share break for both the DMK and the AIADMK, and if there will be a chance for the TVK to enter into the state legislative assembly still remains a question.
All right, thanks Sharda for joining us and giving us all the latest about TVK's rally. We'll continue to track all the developments we're getting from the election-bound state of Tamil Nadu. And now viewers are staying with Tamil Nadu. In fact, dynastic politics is now taking center stage in the state. Earlier, DMK MP and senior leader Kanimozi spoke exclusively to Republic. Now, she hit out at Union Minister Piyush Goyal over his comment made on dynastic politics. She also claimed that central government was now marginalizing the state, trying to chip away Tamil Nadu's rights. Take a listen.
I feel very, very confident that the DMK is going to be voted back to power and people are with us.
And also, yesterday Piyush Goyal stated the dynasty politics continue in DMK, and he's constantly been pointing out that.
No, Piyush Goyal shouldn't be talking about dynasty politics because he comes from a dynasty himself. And see, when you talk about dynastic politics, it is not that somebody is dropped into a particular place. We are elected representatives. People have accepted us.
Also, you being an MP, being the centre, there's you also being the one who created the manifesto along with the team. The first page of your manifesto is talking about state and autonomy and getting the rights. You've been a person who's been fighting for it for a long time. Do you think that if elected to power, DMK will make sure that whatever resolution that you pass in the last assembly will you be able to bring it?
See, the union government has made it a point to chip away the state rights in every bill it passes. We are also worried about delimitation now. In the garb of bringing women's reservation, they are trying to, take away the number of seats from the states. So everything is against state rights. So it has become a constant battle now to make sure that the rights of the states, not just in Tamil Nadu, for the entire nation, it's protected.
Also now VCK leader Thirumalan withdrew his nomination, and then ADMK leader Edapadi says that it is DMK's pressure that made the VCK leader.
See, he is a very big leader, and I think it is his decision to contest and his decision to withdraw because of some decisions made within the party. I don't think the DMK has any say in it, nor do we believe that we can interfere into another party and ask them to do, because our leader MK Stalin and all of us in the party have great respect and regards for Mr. Thirumavalavan.
And now viewers are moving on to the election-bound state of West Bengal, where we're looking at the tussle between the TMC and the Election Commission now escalating. Now, TMC MP Derek O'Brien shouted at CEC, in fact, to which the Election Commissioner responded saying Derek O'Brien should respect the Commission and maintain a decorum than showing indecent behaviour towards the Election Commission. Now, the four-member delegation was also warned by CEC to not put out intimidating behaviour, and no notice shall be accepted without a proper signature. So we are looking at tussle essentially escalating between a TMC as well as the Election Commission. This time it's Derek O'Brien who in fact is shouted at the Chief Election Commissioner, to which the election, in fact, the Commissioner has now responded very strongly, saying that Derek O'Brien should respect the Commission and maintain the decorum while in fact engaging with the Election Commission. Now, the four-member delegation was also warned by the Chief Election Commissioner to not put out intimidating behaviour, and no notice shall be accepted without proper signatures. My colleague Harsha now joins with more details on this. Harsha, it seems every day we're looking at this tussle between the Election Commission and TMC just intensifying. Now, this time it's Derek O'Brien at the heart of this controversy, with the Chief Election Commissioner strongly saying that he should, in fact, not engage in indecent behaviour.
So what we learned through our sources is that there was a very heated argument in the chamber of the CC Gyanesh Kumar. We saw that today morning there was a four-member delegation of TMC which visited CC Gyanesh Kumar to register their complaint, to give the notice regarding the major deletion in the electoral list till now, and also what they have been stating, that there are few observers against whom the CC should take action who are working in base of the Bharatiya Janata Party. This was their formal complaint and it was without signatures. But what was very surprising in that room where the TMC delegation was, that they all were arguing with CC Gyanesh Kumar, and Derek O'Brien completely lost his control on his behavior. His behavior was very indecent, which the CC had to respond to Derek O'Brien by telling him that you have to sit down. Such indecent behavior and the decorum has to be maintained of the commission and of the chair of the commission as well. Derek O'Brien can't lose his control, can't show the indecent behavior and lose the decorum in the chamber of the commission, Election Commission. This was what was the response of the CEC when Derek O'Brien stood up from his chair and he started shouting and lambasting at CC Gyanesh Kumar. We all very well know that how TMC has been alleging that CC Gyanesh Kumar, and also there are several election observers and polling observers who are working in behest of the Bharatiya Janata Party, to which each and every allegation has been straightforward, bluntly denied by CC by stating that election observer and polling observer has been mindfully checked, and after that they have been deputed and deployed in the election-bound states. There were many complaints about the officers of the West Bengal as well, and therefore they were transferred and also now have been deployed in different state elections rather than being deployed in West Bengal. But here, the behavior of Derek O'Brien was very surprising towards CEC Gyanesh Kumar. He started lambasting, he started shouting, he started at the top of his voice. Derek O'Brien was completely, continuously arguing without any facts. What we have got to know from inside the sources of the Election Commission, that there were no sources, there were no facts. All the baseless allegations were being leveled by the TMC delegation on the CC Gyanesh Kumar. They all started shouting, and that very moment CC Gyanesh Kumar had to stop them and tell them to maintain the decorum of the commission and also not to showcase such indecent behavior inside the chamber of CC Gyanesh Kumar. The meeting went on for almost 20 minutes. They all came outside. They spoke to media. They spoke about the 4:30 p.m. press conference of the Indeed bloc leaders against Gyanesh Kumar and against the Election Commission on the deletion and on the several allegations which they have leveled against the commission. Back to you.
Right, of course, Harsha, and also, you know, as you mentioned, it was clearly a very indecent act on the part of Derek O'Brien. Was there any apology issued after the incident, perhaps by the MP himself or by the party? Any words of remorse towards this incident?
No, not yet. We have not heard anything like this from the TMC delegation. Derek O'Brien just came outside. He spoke about what happened in the meeting. He straightforwardly stated that these are the allegations. Our notice was not being accepted. In fact, Sagrika Ghosh, one of the member of the delegation, took to the social media platform. She has completely denied. No remorse, no apologies, no sorry to the commission for the indecent behavior. They in fact went on by stating that this was not what happened in the meeting. The meeting was completely opposite. CC Gyanesh Kumar is trying to have the benefit of the doubt from the entire meeting, and this was not what happened. Yes, the notice and the signatory issue was right, but then she has leveled again another allegation on CC Gyanesh Kumar by stating that the CC told the TMC delegation to go out of the room. So this is now what the war of words and the heated argument is being stated from the ECI sources and from the TMC side as well. But the reality which has come outside is that no, Derek O'Brien has not apologized, no sorry, no remorse. Yes, but he still behaved very indecently to the commission. He disrespected the chair of the commission. In fact, he went on shouting at CC Gyanesh Kumar inside the room at time when the meeting was underway between delegation and the commission. Back to you.
All right, so no remorse and no apology from TMC right after it acted in a very indecent manner before the Chief Election Commissioner. Thanks, Harsha, for joining us, and we'll continue to track this tussle between TMC and the Election Commission. And now viewers, a shifting focus from Holland to Hyderabad. Iran has been trolling Donald Trump worldwide with viral memes and at times videos as well. Now this battlefield has shifted to social media. While Trump uses Truth Social to claim military dominance and victory, Iran here is fighting back with a coordinated campaign of memes and AI-generated videos. Now Iranian embassies around the world are bypassing traditional media to mock Trump's diplomacy. Here's the detailed report. Take a look.
We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it.
Well, it's only good if you win. You know, you can only do. And we've won. Let me say, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over. But we won.
And now, viewers, in a surprising move, President Donald Trump delayed planned military strikes on Iran, opting instead for a diplomatic approach. Now, Trump here agreed to suspend the attacks on Iran if Iran agrees to open the Strait of Hormuz on a temporary basis. Now, Iran, in turn, also proposed a peace plan and a 2-week ceasefire, easing regional tensions and allowing negotiations to now begin. Take a look at this report.
In a strategic redirection, President Donald Trump paused imminent military action against Iran on Tuesday night, preferring a diplomatic solution to the escalating tensions. From "will put Iran into the Stone Age" rhetoric to now hailing a new golden age of the Middle East. Donald Trump has said that it is a big day for world peace and added that big money will be made from the reopening of Hormuz. Trump added that US forces would be hanging around in the region to ensure that the ceasefire was followed. Trump's shifting stance on Iran in less than 24 hours comes as a sigh of relief after 40 days of relentless attacks. Mere hours before the ceasefire deal was put into place, Trump had threatened the entire Iranian civilization. He had said that a whole civilization would die and never be brought back again, sparking fears of a catastrophic escalation. He termed it one of history's most important moments. And now that there is a 2-week ceasefire deal in place, all eyes are now on the Strait of Hormuz and what Iran has planned for it. Trump has said that the US would help with the traffic at Hormuz. However, Iranian officials pledged the strait would be accessible only under their military management. The 2-week ceasefire is temporary, but nations across the world are hoping for a permanent ease in the war and restoration of energy supply routes to normal.
And now, viewers, and now that the US and Iran both have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire, we're looking at global reactions pouring in on these talks, which are set to begin on Friday in Islamabad. Australia, Japan and New Zealand all have welcomed this 2-week ceasefire. And more details you'll catch in this report about how nations worldwide are now reacting to this 2-week ceasefire deal.
Nations across Asia and the Pacific are welcoming the announcement of a 2-week pause in the war between Iran and the US. Just before Donald Trump's deadline came to an end. In Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Foreign Minister Penny Wong issued a joint statement saying they welcome the agreement and have a long call for de-escalation. The Australian government stressed its continued collaboration with international partners to ensure the safe flow of critical supplies to those most in need. Japan also expressed optimism with its chief cabinet secretary, describing the ceasefire announcement as a positive development. While in New Zealand, Foreign Minister Winston Peters welcomed the effort to end hostilities. Peters noted that while the news is encouraging, significant work remains in the coming days to secure a lasting ceasefire. Regional governments are closely monitoring the situation, emphasizing diplomacy and stability in one of the world's most critical energy corridors. The two-week pause now offers a window for negotiations that could ease tensions and stabilize energy markets.
All right, that's the latest we could pick up from the war in West Asia and the election-bound states of Bengal and Tamil Nadu. Don't go anywhere. On the other side, we get you all the details about TVK chief holding a vibrant roadshow in Tuticorin. He is set to address now a massive public rally.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 11th year, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, mass comm, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
Our pure Shahi Paneer Masala. Delicious, healthy, every day.
Three, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
There is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for suction of the excretion, which looks to be needing attention. But the crew in Artemis, they are well trained to handle such.
प्यास बुझाए ठंडक लाए सबको भाई जीरा से MDH का जल जीरा जीरा से
जीरा से असली रिफ्रेशिंग, असली स्वाद, असली मजा।
MDH केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे केसरिया से मन जोगी
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल, बोलो जुबान केसरी।
आर प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
There is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the wall which is to operate for section of the excretion, which looks to be needing attention.
West Bengal CM Mamata Banerjee files nomination from the Bhabanipur seat. Chief Election Commissioner Ganesh Kumar allegedly tells TMC delegation to get lost during a meeting. TMC delegation raises concerns about voter disenfranchisement and alleged biases in SIR. CM at election rally in Cuddalore takes on opposition ECI-TMC in alliance with BJP, says it has now become a Sangh organization. Assam, Kerala, Puducherry set to vote tomorrow after concluding the campaigning for the assembly polls. Actor Rajinikanth takes an indirect jab at TVK chief. Vijay says youngsters should focus on studying and education and not go behind actors. Okay, viewers, so 2026 verdict. Well, today is 8th of April and tomorrow multiple states will go to polls. So we are getting you all the top updates coming in here on Republic TV, and there's a lot of developments coming in from Assam. It's a big blow to Congress a day ahead of those elections. Congress candidate withdraws self from the election. So big updates coming in here. Breaking news from poll-bound Assam. Just a day before the state was supposed to go for polling, the Congress candidate has withdrawn themselves from the election. That is right. Big updates coming in here. A Congress candidate says Congress betrayed him and he will not contest. A day ahead of the polls, Congress candidate says he is withdrawing himself from the fray. So big updates coming in here, viewers. On Republic TV, more allegations coming in here of a Congress candidate making these allegations, saying very clearly that the Congress has betrayed, and that is why he will not be going ahead and contesting in those polls. So back-to-back updates coming in here on Republic TV. Suren Daimeri is saying that they're going to go ahead and not contest. They will not be contesting in these elections because the Congress has betrayed him. He is a Congress candidate, and we're getting you all these updates coming in as Assam goes to polls. So back-to-back updates coming in here on Republic TV. Let's go to my colleague. We are being joined by Aniruddha. Aniruddha, we're counting down to the very important Assam elections, and how much time is left? Less than 24 hours. But one Congress candidate has withdrawn himself, and he has made a very, very big statement saying the Congress has betrayed him. Now, what was he talking about, and what are the allegations which are coming in from this candidate?
Yes, Sivangi, this is a very unprecedented development. For the first time, such development has been witnessed in the country, where a candidate has declared that he is withdrawing himself from the fray just a day ahead of the poll. Remember, Assam is going to the poll tomorrow and today. Suren Daimeri, the Congress candidate of Udalguri constituency, has withdrawn himself. He has said that he is not going to contest the election as the party, the Congress party, has betrayed him. He has made some measure and startling allegations against the Congress party. He has said that the Congress leadership was not in touch with him till yesterday, till when the campaigning got over. They didn't contacted him. They had betrayed him. This is the allegation that has been leveled by Surendra Mari against the Congress party. And he has said that he is not willing to contest the election as a Congress candidate. However, the legal validity, if we talk about the legal validity, Sivangi, it is very doubtful because, you know, as we all know, that the last date of withdrawal of nomination has already passed, and if a candidate cannot withdraw himself from the fray a day ahead of the poll. So in these conditions, it will be very interesting to observe what the election commission will decide on, because as Surendra Mari has himself withdrawn from the contest, but his name is already there in the EVMs. His name is already there in the EVMs along with other two candidates, that is Rihan Doimari of the BPF and Dipen Bodo of the UPPL. So it will be very interesting to observe as what will happen to this particular constituency, because if we go by the procedure of the law, the guidelines that has been laid down by the Election Commission of India, then clearly a day ahead of the polls, no candidate can withdraw self. So in this condition, under these circumstances, what call the Election Commission will take will be interesting to observe.
Right, okay. Aniruddha, I'm really sorry I have to interrupt you. We're getting some breaking news coming in. MEA's statement is out on the recent development in West Asia. Statement on the recent development in West Asia. We welcome the ceasefire reached and hope it will lead to a lasting peace in West Asia, as we continuously advocated earlier. De-escalation, dialogue and diplomacy are essential to bring an early end to the ongoing conflict. The conflict has already caused immense suffering to people and disrupted global energy supply and trade networks. We expect that unimpeded freedom of navigation and global flow of commerce would prevail through the Strait of Hormuz. MEA issues the first statement. Okay, we're being joined by our senior executive editor, Abhishek Kapoor. Abhishek, this is the first statement which has come in, and India has welcomed the Iran war ceasefire.
Well, yes, and rightly so, because our energy security was in jeopardy, getting compromised because of, like for so many others, because of the kind of from West Asia, and with the Hormuz choke, it was affecting India and rest of the world. And just like rest of the world, we also wanted this to end quickly and for peace to prevail. So irrespective of who played a role, because Pakistan has taken an active lead because of the Muslim Brotherhood and the fact that they have an ongoing security pact with Saudi Arabia, and the fact that the Chinese were also comfortable talking to them through them rather than talking to the Americans directly. Pakistan playing the role of a courier between all the sides, and the ceasefire has happened. Also remember that Donald Trump, in one of their statements, has already attributed the initiative to China, so that remains doubtful whether it was Pakistan or China. But irrespective, what is important is that peace is in the larger interest of humanity, peace is in the interest of India. And that's why this Ministry of External Affairs statement, silent on the peace process per se, but welcoming the ceasefire and hoping that this is going to bring in or herald long-lasting, enduring peace, and the Strait of Hormuz would finally open.
That's right. Abhishek is getting us more updates here. Abhishek, now we see it's a big statement coming in. And what also, like you mentioned here, which is very, very important, is the line about Strait of Hormuz. We expect that unimpeded freedom of navigation and global flow of commerce would prevail through the Strait of Hormuz. However, the MEA still says it's a hope, and it's a hope that a lot of countries have, that things should become a little bit easier there because you've seen a huge blockade and a lot of issues for multiple nations.
Yeah, absolutely. So the blockade applied to everyone, maybe a little less measure to India, because we have had about 9 ships come out over the last fortnight carrying LPG and crude for India, and that was a goodwill measure from the Iranians. for their long-standing friendship with India and people of India. But still, this was no match to the daily requirement, and the struggle was there. The government has managed to tide over the crisis, but this is coming out as a sigh of relief. And that's why there's hope that the Hormuz should become absolutely normalized in the soonest possible time. I also remember that the end of hostilities has been incumbent upon Iran removing the blockade. As per the agreement, it seems, so the contours of which are publicly available, Hormuz would be now jointly managed between Iran and Oman, and that there would be some fee charged which would act as a war reparation for Iran to rebuild. If that understanding is reached, then it applies to everyone. But if the Hormuz does not open, then of course you are back to square one, and the Americans again get an opportunity to escalate. We have in fact already seen, Shivangi, that despite the ceasefire announcement by President Trump, there has been some exchange of missiles between Iran and Israel, for example, and Israel completely refuses to accept one condition of the 10-point charter sent by Iranians, which is that the war in Lebanon has to stop. Iran does not want to do that. So, beg your pardon, Israel does not want to do that. So I think it's a fluid situation, but there is definitely an element of climb down from both the sides, from the Iranians and from the Americans. So President Trump, who was saying that a civilization would be obliterated just last evening, is now saying that, okay, fine, let's pull back. Typically Trump. And, you know, the world is watching. And as the Ministry of External Affairs statement says, we hope that Hormuz is open and the peace that has now been brought in with the ceasefire is enduring and long-lasting.
All right, thank you, Abashi, for getting us all those details. MEA statement on the recent developments in West Asia, where the MEAs welcomed the ceasefire between US and Iran, and has, like India has been saying, that they have advocated dialogue and diplomacy in such situations. We're getting some more breaking news coming in. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif backlash after an edited post on X showed an earlier version labeled draft. Pakistan's PM message on X, sparking speculation about external influence or scripting of the message. The post, which urged US President Trump to extend the deadline for talks with Iran, has raised questions about Pakistan's diplomatic messaging and whether it's being independently crafted. Social media users are divided, with some joking about the copy-paste error and others suggesting the message was dictated by the United States. So we put out that post for you. So this is a message from Shehbaz Sharif urging Trump to delay threats of military action against Iran. After a lot of social media users pointed out there was an earlier version of this post, and it appeared to be a draft, because that draft was written there, draft Pakistan PM message on X. The earlier message said draft Pakistan's PM message on X. So that has really got a lot of mockery online, and has led to a big controversy. So when Shehbaz Sharif's account shared a message that included the heading draft Pakistan PM message on X, the inclusion of the word draft suggested the post may not have been intended for public release in its original form. And the tweet was edited, removing the draft label but retaining the core content. So there you can see that the original post and then the edited post on your right. So now this entire tweet has really raised a lot of questions. You know, a lot of questions are being raised, and whether Pakistan Prime Minister was the one who drafted that message, or was it influenced by external factors. So back-to-back updates coming in. A lot of social media users have also mocked this post of Shehbaz Sharif, raising concerns over the initial post being a draft, and also questioning that who was really typing that message on behalf of Shehbaz Sharif. So getting you these updates coming in on Republic TV, there is a new row that you can see because of Shehbaz Sharif's draft post. And remember that Pakistan is trying to position itself as a diplomatic voice in the Iran crisis. And in the backdrop of all this, this is Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's tweet urging Trump to extend talks with Iran is now under scrutiny after an apparent draft version surfaced online. And the US and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with talks to finalize a peace deal set to begin in Pakistan's Islamabad on Friday. Australia, Japan and New Zealand welcomed the 2-week ceasefire in the Middle East that was reached to negotiate a resolution to the US-Israeli conflict with Iran. More details on how nations across the world reacted to the ceasefire deal.
Nations across Asia and the Pacific are welcoming the announcement of a 2-week pause in the war between Iran and the US. Just before Donald Trump's deadline came to an end. In Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Foreign Minister Penny Wong issued a joint statement saying they welcome the agreement and have a long call for de-escalation. The Australian government stressed its continued collaboration with international partners to ensure the safe flow of critical supplies to those most in need. Japan also expressed optimism with its chief cabinet secretary, describing the ceasefire announcement as a positive development. While in New Zealand, Foreign Minister Winston Peters welcomed the effort to end hostilities. Peters noted that while the news is encouraging, significant work remains in the coming days to secure a lasting ceasefire. Regional governments are closely monitoring the situation, emphasizing diplomacy and stability in one of the world's most critical energy corridors. The 2-week pause now offers a window for negotiations that could ease tensions and stabilize energy markets.
Lebanese army has issued a warning to citizens amid the recent ceasefire developments, advising them to exercise caution when returning to southern villages and towns. Warning comes after an Israeli airstrike targeted a building in the Al-Abbasiyah area of southern Lebanon, and residents are urged to steer clear of areas infiltrated by Israeli occupation forces to safeguard their safety, as they may be at risk of ongoing Israeli attacks. The army also reminds residents to follow directives from deployed military units and be vigilant about unexploded ordnance and suspicious objects left behind by Israeli aggression. So Lebanon army calls on citizens to exercise caution at these very, very sensitive times. This is a update coming in from the situation which is evolving in the West Asia region. Because also this getting back some details, as this reminding our viewers of some details which had come in earlier, because Lebanon is not included in that ceasefire. But Israel specifically has said this. Israel is carrying out new airstrikes in South Lebanon area, and it's saying that the 2-week ceasefire does not include Lebanon. So after that, the Lebanese army has issued a warning to citizens amid the recent ceasefire developments, advising them to exercise caution when returning to southern villages and towns. Warning comes after an Israeli airstrike targeted a building in the Al-Abbasiyah area of South Lebanon, and residents are urged to steer clear of areas infiltrated by Israeli occupation forces to safeguard their safety, as they may be at risk of ongoing Israeli attacks. The army also reminds residents to follow directives from deployed military units and be vigilant about unexploded ordnance and suspicious objects left behind by Israeli aggression. And let's see what's happening when it comes to the ceasefire. Iran citizens have gathered and raised slogans at Tehran after the 2-week ceasefire was announced. They burned flags on the streets and voiced their anger against USA. The 2-week ceasefire comes after 40 days of war, and it remains to be seen how the deal will play out over the next 10 days. Citizens in Iran remain apprehensive and are expecting the war to continue. More details in this next report.
After being on the receiving end of US and Israeli strikes for 40 days, a 2-week peace plan is now in effect across Iran. However, hours after the ceasefire was made public, thousands of Iranians turned up on the streets of Tehran on Wednesday morning. They raised slogans in Farsi and Arabic. They shouted "Death to America," "Death to Israel," and "War until victory." They also raised placards while crowding Tehran for a protest, one of which read, "No compromise, no apology, battle with America." Iranians remain apprehensive and skeptical of the 2-week peace deal. They demand a Security Council resolution.
قابل اعتماد نیست. قابل اعتماد نیست. تا قطعنامه نشه شورای امنیت تصویب نکنه و این خسارات داده نشه اصلا قابل اعتماد نیست. نه بنده نه ملت ایران این قبول نداره.
The protesters also burnt American and Israeli flags. The loud chants by the protesters sparked concerns even among the organizers, who tried to calm the protesters, but in vain. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also welcomed the peace deal. He called on all parties to abide by the terms of the ceasefire in order to pave the way towards a lasting and comprehensive peace in the region.
Whoa.
After being bombarded for 40 days, Iranians get a 2-week reprieve for life to return to normal.
We're getting some more breaking news coming in. Meeting of the group of ministers chaired by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. The meeting will be held at Kartavya Bhavan at 3 p.m. and a crucial meeting following the Israel-Iran conflict. The crisis in West Asia will be discussed. So big updates coming in here. What we see, the meeting of the group of ministers will be chaired by Rajnath Singh, and this will be happening around 3 p.m. So this is still around an hour left for that. A crucial meeting following the Israel-Iran conflict. Crisis in West Asia will be discussed. The multiple high-level meetings which have been held with Prime Minister Modi and Rajnath Singh, both of them chairing these very important meetings to discuss the situation which is evolving in West Asia. So it's very, very likely around 3 p.m. the Union Defense Minister Rajnath Singh will be chairing a meeting of a group of ministers to review the evolving situation in the region following this 2-week ceasefire between the US and Iran that will be expected to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The meeting comes in the backdrop of an advisory issued by the Ministry of External Affairs urging Indian nationals in Iran to exit the conflict-hit country. And the ministry has also advised citizens against approaching international land borders without prior consultation. So we have seen Rajnath Singh chair multiple such similar meetings last week to assess the development and chart measures to mitigate the impact on India. Marking an end to a 39-day-long war across West Asia, US President Trump announces a temporary and conditional ceasefire with Iran. Now, while this ceasefire, according to Trump, is broadly conditional upon Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz, there has been much talk on how Iran claims that this ceasefire as a win because of how Trump allegedly caved into Iran's demands framed in its 10-point proposal. Take a look at this report as we get you the latest.
After 39 long days of havoc and bloodbath, part of the Middle East war, US President Donald Trump took to social media announcing a temporary 2-week-long ceasefire. Amidst Trump's ceasefire announcement was one claim that said US had received Iran's 10-point proposal. This claim being something Iran boasted of too, of having Trump's cave in to Iran's demands for ceasefire. Iran's 10-point proposal entailed demands such as Israel and US curtailing its aggression and accepting Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. That's not all. Iran also urges for acceptance of uranium enrichment in the Farsi version of its ceasefire plan. Iran pushed for the lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions as was imposed by the US, especially amidst the war-resultant global economic and energy crisis, and termination of both UNSC and IAEA resolutions. Lastly, IRA stressed on how US and Israel must pay and compensate to Iran, while also seeking US combat forces to withdraw and back down. The additional cessation of war in Lebanon was also a demand put forth by Iran amidst the ceasefire negotiations. With this 10-point peace plan reportedly accepted, the US president has stepped down from earlier threats of expanding attacks on Iran, but also maintains this temporary ceasefire to be conditional on Iran honoring the ceasefire and reopening the Strait of Hormuz.
And viewers, what you're coming right up, Donald Trump terms a peace deal as the beginning of a golden age for Middle East.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
आलू चाट या फ्रूट चाट,
स्वाद बढ़ाए चमकी चाट।
क्या बात है? स्वादिष्ट पकोड़े और फरसान, अरे चमकी चाट है इसकी जान।
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चमकी चाट।
Character, the taste of success.
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा, क्या स्वाद है? अरे मेरी राजा, सबका राजा और प्योर मसाला।
Three, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundancy.
चमकी चाट से क्या बना है?
सैंडविच, लस्सी और छाछ।
हर घूंट में चमकी चाट। ड्राई फ्रूट और दही बड़े। चमकी चाट से स्वाद बढ़े।
असली स्वाद सिर्फ चमकी चाट।
केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे, दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे। केसरिया से मन जोगी।
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल, बोलो जुबान केसरी।
आर प्योर शाही पनीर मसाला, डिलीशियस, हेल्दी, एवरीडे।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, Overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the waterways. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issues. And what they have reported now, even we were going through and seeing, it is something to do with the valve which is to operate for suction of the excretion, which looks to be needing.
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Very warm welcome. You're watching Republic TV. I'm Yesu Bharadwaj, and US President Donald Trump has announced a 2-week breather in the ongoing West Asia war. He said that he will stop all bombing campaigns against Iran for the next 2 weeks until a peace deal is reached. We're getting you all the details, but first, here's a check on your headlines for the hour. Take a look. Donald Trump terms the peace deal as the beginning of golden age for West Asia. Israeli opposition leader criticizes deal, terms it a political disaster. As the 2-week ceasefire begins, the focus now shifts to vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Nations across the world welcome the 2-week temporary ceasefire deal on Iran. Pakistan's role in peace deal between US and Iran emerges as Islamabad is set to hold a high-level meeting. Israeli Prime Minister says Lebanon not part of peace deal as strikes across southern Lebanon continue. Eight killed in southern Lebanon as Israeli strikes continue to escalate across the region. Viewers, now Pakistan has emerged as a mediator in between the US and Iran in the ongoing West Asia tensions. Now Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is facing massive backlash after his edited post on X showed an earlier version that was labeled draft Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X. Now this has sparked speculation about external influence or scripting of the message. Now the post that urged US President Donald Trump to extend the deadline for talks with Iran has had raised questions about Pakistan's diplomatic efforts in the war and whether or not these messaging are they original, whether it's being independently crafted. Now, social media users stand divided, with some even joking about the copy-paste era and others suggesting that the message was dictated by the US President Donald Trump himself. That's the latest that we're picking up. Now, that was the original tweet on your right that Shehbaz Sharif has posted, and on your left is the draft Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X. Now, this raises pertinent questions on whether or not this was even an original text that the Pakistan's Prime Minister had written himself. In fact, questions are being raised about whether this could have been an initiation by external pressure, by external forces, by showing a draft of the Pakistan's Prime Minister, his tweet on X. That's the latest that we're learning in. Now remember, moments after the ceasefire was announced, Shehbaz Sharif took to X and he said that they have been able to broker a peace deal between the US and Iran. Now, viewers, at the base of this peace deal, the condition is a 10-point deal that Iran has floated. Now, Iran says that nuclear enrichment, uranium enrichment will very much remain a part of the 10-point peace deal. However, Donald Trump says that this deal is negotiable. Now, we're going to take you through what these 10 points are. First is non-aggression by the US and Israel. And this has remained on agenda one since the beginning of the war, since the time that the 10-point plan was floated initially by Iran. The second, Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, we already know that Iran has started levying heavy taxes on shipments and on vessels that are passing through the strait. And Donald Trump, in fact, his, State Secretary Marco Rubio also called this illegal. However, they maintain that they will take full control of the Strait of Hormuz. The third point, acceptance of uranium enrichment. Now, the most contentious one for the US to even believe or to become a part of. US has started this war against the IRGC, the Iranian military, their nuclear development and their uranium enrichment programs. Now, the fourth one is lifting all primary sanctions. Now, Iran has been reeling under heavy Western sanctions for yesteryears now. And the fourth demand on the 10-point plan for peace that Iran has put forward to the US President Donald Trump is that all sanctions on Iran must be lifted with immediate effect. The fifth one is of lifting of all secondary sanctions. So 2 points that focus heavily on Western sanctions and the secondary sanctions that have followed on Iran that also curb its exports across the globe. Now, sixth demand is termination of UNSC resolutions. This is a big one. The United Nations Security Council's resolutions are demanded to be terminated by the Iranians. Now, seventh is termination of the IAEA resolution. Now, IAEA is the International Atomic Energy Agency. Remember, while they're closely keeping a track on the attacks that are ongoing in West Asia, they are also becoming a deterrent in Iranian uranium enrichment program. The eighth one is of payment of compensation to Iran in the war that has now extended over 39 days. The lethalities, the killings of people, the damage to civilian and energy infrastructure. Iran says that the US must pay back for every damage that's been caused on the Iranian soil. The ninth point, the second last point, is withdrawal of all US combatant forces. Now, remember, about 50,000 US combatants have been placed across US bases in the Gulf region straight to attack Iran, and they have asked for the withdrawal of all those US combatants in the region. The 10th and the last one is the cessation of war in Lebanon. Now, remember, Lebanon's proxy, Hezbollah, has stood shoulder to shoulder with Iran in the West Asia war. They continue to strike on behalf of Iran amid the ongoing war, and the 10th resolution on their 10-point peace deal plan is to curb down the violence that's ongoing in Lebanon, especially in southern Lebanon, against the proxy group Hezbollah. Now, viewers, in a surprising move, President Donald Trump also delayed planned military strikes on Iran, opting instead for a diplomatic approach. Now, Trump agreed to suspend attacks if Iran opens the Strait of Hormuz temporarily. Now, Iran in turn proposed a peace plan and a 2-week ceasefire. We went through the 10 points of the peace plan right here. That requires for easing of regional tensions and also allows negotiation and talks to begin. Iran has said if the 10-point plan is not agreed with, then there will be no negotiation, there will be no roundtable with the United States. Now, Iranian citizens also gathered and raised slogans in Tehran, but take a look at this.
In a strategic redirection, President Donald Trump paused imminent military action against Iran on Tuesday night, preferring a diplomatic solution to the escalating tensions. From "will put Iran into the Stone Age" rhetoric to now hailing a new golden age of the Middle East, Donald Trump has said that it is a big day for world peace and added that big money will be made from the reopening of Hormuz. Trump added that US forces would be hanging around in the region to ensure that the ceasefire was followed. Trump's shifting stance on Iran in less than 24 hours comes as a sigh of relief after 40 days of relentless attacks. Mere hours before the ceasefire deal was put into place, Trump had threatened the entire Iranian civilization. He had said that a whole civilization would die and never be brought back again, sparking fears of a catastrophic escalation. He termed it one of history's most important moments. And now that there is a 2-week ceasefire deal in place, all eyes are now on the Strait of Hormuz and what Iran has planned for it. Trump has said that the US would help with the traffic at Hormuz. However, Iranian officials pledged the strait would be accessible only under their military management. The 2-week ceasefire is temporary, but nations across the world are hoping for a permanent ease in the war and restoration of energy supply routes to normal.
Viewers, now a very surprising development comes in the war. Now a 10-point plan that we just showed you, we walked you across all the 10 points that Iran has put forward for a possible truce with the United States. That also includes a ceasefire with Lebanon. But on the contrary, the Israeli Defense Forces have said that Lebanon is in fact not a part of the peace deal or the war pause at all, and they will continue to batter southern Lebanon. In fact, strikes were reported just this morning in southern Lebanon on various Hezbollah targets. But regional officials say that ceasefire also includes Lebanon. Now, they said that Lebanon is a part of the 2-week ceasefire that's ongoing between the United States and Iran. Now, this official who has made this statement is also involved in negotiations and spoke on the condition of anonymity. He said that the pause applies, and I'm quoting him, to all fronts, including Lebanon. Now, Pakistan, that remains a key mediator, has also said that ceasefire includes the fighting in Lebanon. However, the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the ceasefire will not stop the Israeli fight against Hezbollah inside Lebanon. That's the latest that we're learning in. On one hand, officials say that Lebanon is a part of the truce plan. In fact, Lebanon has also been made a part of the 10-point plan that has been put forward by the Iranians for a truce to even happen between the United States and Iran. But on the other hand, Israeli Defense Forces continue to maintain that their operations in southern Lebanon and across borders in Lebanon will not stop, and they will continue to batter the Hezbollah proxy that sits deep inside the Lebanese territory. Now, in fact, we're also being joined by retired Major General Shashi Asthana, who is a defense expert, to get us more details on the matter. Major General, I want to understand from you, on one hand, the officials are saying that Lebanon is very much a part of this truce. But again, Israeli Defense Forces have continued to strike Lebanon. Today morning also there were strikes that were reported. One is that aspect of the war. Second, yesterday Trump said that this will be an end of an entire civilization, and today morning he wakes up comfortably and says that, oh, there's a 2-week pause mediated by Pakistan. How do we read this? At one point he takes the entire intensity up to the sky and then it drops down back to the ground.
In fact, yesterday itself, I had mentioned that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it has happened exactly the way I had predicted. And the reasons are very simple. Firstly, President Trump was trying for an exit, and his threats of yesterday that civilization will die tonight, etc., they were basically maximum pressure and a blackmailing technique to get the best result by today morning. When he realized that he is not going to get anything more than what has been given to him, perhaps he thought that it is better to pull back and declare a victory and somehow try and get an exit. Now, it was known that as far as this further attacks would be retaliated by Iran. Iran had said in no uncertain terms that the moment their power grid is targeted, they are also going to do a similar attacks on the Gulf countries too. So that was one major issue. Secondly, going beyond that, so many were contemplating regarding nuclear war or something like that. That is beyond, I don't think he has that kind of confidence in him to do such a thing, because there was fair amount of internal pressure too.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that he is going to have the kind of there was a question of impeachment also somehow. There was question of activating Article 25. People were thinking that such a the nuclear button under him may be a big problem. So things like that. There was a fair amount of pressure inside as well. So this is one part of it as to why that happened. The second part of the question which you asked was regarding the Lebanon issue. See, Israel was trying to make the best of it, and this is also I pointed out yesterday when Israel was striking very hard on Iran, because Israel knew President Trump's taco syndrome, that is, Trump always chickens out, and they thought that might as well, before he signs something or before he agrees to something like ceasefire, let's degrade Iran's capability as much as we can. Now, when we come to the Iranian part, they also retaliated even in the morning, even after the ceasefire, because they also had to avenge whatever was done by Israel in last night. As far as Lebanon is concerned, the situation is slightly different. Israelis have already entered inside Lebanon, and Israel is threatened, the northern Israel is threatened by Hezbollah's strikes. They feel that this is an opportunity which they have got, that their troops are already inside Lebanon, so they might as well try and degrade Hezbollah as much as they can.
Definitely.
And therefore, they will like to continue a little more than what has been agreed upon. So this Hezbollah, Israel's action on Hezbollah are likely to continue for a little more time unless America puts some pressure on Israel to back off.
Right. Major General Asthana, in fact, continue being with us. We're also getting in some more breaking development now, viewers. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is facing a huge backlash after a drafted tweet of his made it online. Now, viewers online are completely divided. They are saying that Sharif's earlier post, the draft that you can see on your left-hand side on the screens, was in fact not written by him. This was not an original deal that was brokered by Pakistan, and that the words were in fact borrowed from the West. And they have also said, people are also saying, and there are contentious assumptions about the tweet where it said that Western pressure has in fact mediated Pakistan's position in this entire war, and that his earlier tweet, people are questioning whether Pakistan's diplomatic message is true, whether it's being independently crafted or not, or whether it's a meddling by the United States in the message that has been put up. Social media users are completely divided. This tweet has now sparked speculation about external influence or even the scripting of the message. Now, the post urges US President to extend the deadline for talks with Iran and has raised major questions over Pakistan's independence in its diplomatic messaging, especially focusing on Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's tweet. Now, coming back to Major General Shashi Asthana, who continues being with us on the broadcast. Major General Asthana, since the beginning, we've seen Pakistan is acting as a mediator. Iran has always given a rebuttal to Pakistan, blaming Pakistan of carrying the US's agenda and trying to mediate by not being neutral. And just yesterday, a tweet draft for Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was floated online, where people are questioning whether or not this diplomatic effort from Pakistanis is even an independent decision that they have made, or are they acting as the West's puppet, the US's puppet?
More than the puppet, I will say that Pakistan was acting like a postman or a delivery boy for the message for America. They were told to do a particular thing in a particular manner, and they have just obeyed what America has told them to do. Pakistan by itself doesn't have the kind of leverage. I don't think Iranians were listening to Pakistan by any stretch of imagination. The only thing is that they were the conduit to get that message. And the fact that it was a draft given to Shehbaz Sharif seems little more credible because the kind of language which was used, and the fact that by mistake he released the draft, maybe in the exuberance to do it faster, because maybe somebody was putting pressure on him to do so. So that's one part of it. The basic problem is, as far as Pakistan is concerned, they also had a nod from China.
Yeah.
Why I say so is because there were some consultations there. Chinese also had some kind of stake in a manner that initially Chinese did not intervene, and they were also getting benefited in a manner that when America is getting weaker, Iran is fighting them, America is losing reputation, losing material, and losing money. So that was to an advantage of China as far as Cold War 2.0 is concerned, and or competition, strategic competition between China and US is concerned.
Yeah.
But beyond a point, once the cost of oil started rising beyond a point, then I think it does affect China also adversely, and therefore China must have given them a nod. So as far as Pakistan was concerned, it was playing a puppet with two superpowers.
Yeah.
And that is how he managed to deliver a message, and by mistake it came out quite clearly as to what that he was given a text which he was supposed to convey as a postman or a delivery boy. I don't grant them any status more than that, because a mediator is supposed to have some leverage, and he is supposed to have some kind of, shall I say in the matter. They didn't have any say.
Yeah, definitely. And Major General Asthana, also the fact that, you know, the top band of this message says draft for Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X. That is exactly what, you know, the message quotes on its top band. And that is why speculations are being raised that this message was in fact dictated by the United States and sent to the Pakistani Prime Minister for him to then go on to upload it as an independent diplomatic claim in mediation from the Pakistani side. Your first comments on that also, since it is very clear that Pakistan is not in fact a neutral mediator. Pakistan is in already a defense deal with Saudi Arabia that is being struck by Iran, so they cannot be seen as a neutral mediator at all. Major General Asthana.
Certainly, if as far as Iran is concerned, Pakistan had a defense deal with Saudi Arabia. So Iran being suspicious of Pakistan was quite obvious. Secondly, Pakistan was also a route in case US was to launch a major ground operation, let's say hypothetically after some time, then Pakistan was the logistic route. Thirdly, there were instances even earlier, somewhere around June or something, that Pakistan airspace was used when the nuclear sites were targeted. That was earlier part of this year, of last year. So the Iranians believing Pakistan was not a case, and therefore the neutrality of Pakistan was difficult to be assumed. Secondly, there are also suspicion to say that the Chinese help was coming via Pakistan to Iran. That there is also some speculation to that effect in terms of material, in terms of raw material to make drones and missiles. So that also was not very comfortable with United States. There are certain rumors to suggest, we won't know exactly the confirmation part of it, that America had told them that you stop. Initially, America wanted to they told Pakistan to send boots on ground, which Pakistan refused in context of the defense pact with Saudi Arabia and with their sensitivity of the border with Iran. So thereafter, I think they told them that, okay, if that be so, then nothing should move from China to Iran also. So Pakistan was stuck in between, and therefore they were forced to do something which they are not very used to, that is mediation, because they are themselves a problem. They are the only new country which has maximum number of UN designated terrorist entities, and they also have a nuclear weapon. So a nuclear weapon under the hand of terrorist state fits more with Pakistan than Iran, as President Trump was trying to label Iran earlier before this ceasefire happened.
Right, Major General Asthana, it's always a pleasure to have you on Republic. Thanks for such a detailed lowdown on the situation, and of course the conversation will continue. Thank you for joining us on Republic. For now, viewers, shifting focus and taking a look at what's happening in Tehran. Now, Iranian citizens gathered and raised multiple slogans on the streets of Tehran right after the two-week truce. The two-week stopping of bombing campaign was announced by US President Donald Trump. Now, people not only said death to America and death to Israel, they expressed their anger for sure. They also burned flags on the street and voiced their dissent against the American aggression in Iran. Now, the two-week ceasefire comes after 40 long days of war, while Iranian territories, Iranian energy infrastructures have been completely flattened. Multiple deaths reported all across Iran. Now, much like the rest of the globe, the Iranians also do not trust Donald Trump for his word. He has announced a truce, a pause in the fighting before also, but bombing continued nevertheless. So there are speculations that this war will continue, it will go on, and that is the sentiment with which people in Tehran came out on the streets. Take a look at what unfolded.
After being on the receiving end of US and Israeli strikes for 40 days, a two-week peace plan is now in effect across Iran. However, hours after the ceasefire was made public, thousands of Iranians turned up on the streets of Tehran on Wednesday morning. They raised slogans in Farsi and Arabic. They shouted death to America, death to Israel, and war until victory. They also raised placards while crowding Tehran for a protest, one of which read, "No compromise, no apology, battle with America." Iranians remain apprehensive and skeptical of the two-week peace deal. They demand a Security Council resolution.
قابل اعتماد نیست. قابل اعتماد نیست. تا قطعنامه نشه شورای امنیت تصویب نکنه و این خسارات داده نشه اصلا قابل اعتماد نیست. نه بنده نه ملت ایران این قبول نداره.
The protesters also burnt American and Israeli flags. The loud chants by the protesters sparked concerns even among the organizers, who tried to calm the protesters, but in vain. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also welcomed the peace deal. He called on all parties to abide by the terms of the ceasefire in order to pave the way towards a lasting and comprehensive peace in the region. Whoa. After being bombarded for 40 days, Iranians get a two-week reprieve for life to return to normal.
Viewers, that's all that we could wrap in this edition of the News Bulletin. But don't go anywhere. On the other side, we bring you all the details from the poll-bound states of Bengal, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and even the Union Territory, Puducherry, that go to vote on the 9th of April. On the other side, Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar has alleged that TMC delegation, he asked them to get lost during a meeting. TMC delegation raises concerns about voter disenfranchisement and alleged biases in the SIR.
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर्नब मसाला
Character, the taste of success.
प्यास बुझाए ठंडक लाए सबको भाए जीरा से MDH का जलजीरा जीरा से
जीरा से असली रिफ्रेशिंग असली स्वाद असली मजा
MDH
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for 11th year, with top 10 ranked institutions in management, engineering, biotech, law, masscom, telecom, hospitality, fashion and more. Yet another top ranking for Amity University.
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद ये हित तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा क्या स्वाद है? अरे मेरे राजा।
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Okay, overboard dump coming up.
Actually, there is always a redundant chain of excretion systems available on the Artemis. Okay, it is not just the main chain, and it's a redundant chain is also available. And there is no way that the astronauts will be stuck because of the the excretion issue.
Hello viewers, a very good afternoon. We are live and we are breaking. I'm Shivangi Shukla getting you the latest. Less than 24 hours are left for the crucial assembly polls. We'll get to all the details for the headlines first. Let's get started. West Bengal CM Mamata Banerjee files nomination from Bhawanipur seat. Chief Election Commissioner Ganesh Kumar allegedly tells TMC delegation to get lost during a meeting. TMC delegation raises concerns about voter disenfranchisement and alleged biases in SIR. CM at election rally in Cuddalore takes an opposition. AIADMK alliance with BJP says it has now become a Sangh organization. Assam, Kerala, Puducherry set to vote tomorrow after concluding the campaigning for assembly polls. Actor Rajinikanth takes an indirect jibe at TVK chief. Vijay says youngsters should focus on studying and education and not go behind actors. And TVK holds mega roadshow and party. Chief Vijay addresses a massive public rally in Thoothukudi. Viewers, the meeting between a TMC delegation and the full bench of the Election Commission on Wednesday culminated on an acrimonious note, with the TMC saying the panel's chief asked them to get lost at the end of the 7-minute meeting. While the EC accused them of shouting after the meeting, TMC's Rajya Sabha MP Derek O'Brien told media persons that they handed over the letters from the West Bengal CM to the Chief Election Commissioner Ganesh Kumar and also apprised him of the specific instances of poll officials having links with the BJP. Then he said, "Get lost. We have done 8 to 9 meetings with the Election Commission. Apart from the CEC, none of the Election Commissioners spoke." This is what the TMC is saying. So getting you these back-to-back updates coming in here on Republic. We also have a reaction. Let's play it out.
I want to tell you what the election commissioner Chief Election Commissioner told us within 7 minutes of the meeting. Get lost. This is what the Chief Election Commissioner told the Trinamool Congress delegation. Get lost का हिंदी क्या होता है? निकल जाओ यहाँ से. निकल जाओ यहाँ से. ये इलेक्शन कमिश्नर बोला लास्ट में. तो हम निकल जाए. हम लोग निकल आए. We are the second largest opposition party in parliament.
So let's go across. Shambhu is joining us live from outside the Election Commission office, headquarters. Well, Shambhavi, what really happened there? It was a very short meeting, very tense meeting. And what is our election commission saying on that meeting, which turned quite tense?
Well, we know that a delegation from TMC, which included Derek O'Brien, Menika Goswami, Sagrika Ghosh and Saket Gokhale, they went to ECI with their concerns. And now this comes just days after where a BJP delegation was also there raising concerns regarding the violence which was there in West Bengal involving the SIR process. And now when the TMC delegation was there, that meeting was indeed a very short one, which started at 10:02 a.m. and ended at 10:07 a.m. As per Derek O'Brien. And then he said that the CEC asked him to get out. Now that there was an escalated situation where they were presenting examples of people who are associated with BJP and are a part of the election commission. According to Derek O'Brien, they presented 6 examples, but the entire conversation got heated up and was asked to get out. Now, from what we know that they were also asked to maintain the decorum of the commission to make sure that the sanctity of this entire commission is maintained, but it definitely got heated and they were asked to get out, and that is what you can hear Derek O'Brien saying, that they were asked to get out, they were asked to take the delegation and move out of the Election Commission of India. This comes, yes.
That's right. Shambhavi, I'll play out that statement once more and then I'll come back to you.
I want to tell you what the election commissioner, chief election commissioner told us within 7 minutes of the meeting. Get lost. This is what the chief election commissioner told the Trinamool Congress delegation. Get lost का हिंदी क्या होता है? निकल जाओ यहाँ से. निकल जाओ यहाँ से. ये इलेक्शन कमिश्नर बोला लास्ट में. तो हम निकल जाए. हम लोग निकल आए. We are the second largest opposition party in parliament.
Okay, let's go back to Shambhavi, who's joining us live outside the ECI office. Yes, Shambhavi, coming back to you. Now, we know that this delegation was meeting the EC, raising concerns regarding neutrality, fairness, transparency of the electoral process in West Bengal. We have seen TMC raise these issues earlier as well. So just help our viewers understand what really happened inside, because we know only one part. You know, the point is we know only one part. We have Derek O'Brien's statement we heard. But when can we understand what really happened inside that meeting and what happened in that meeting?
See, there wasn't much space for a lot to happen, given that it was a very short meeting indeed. And from what we know, they were on their part, they were presenting certain examples, as they were mentioning that there were 6 examples that they had of people who are affiliated with BJP and they are a part of the election commission. And during that, I think that got heated up, and they were also asked to not put out intimidating behavior. They were asked to, they were initially given warning if that is what is we understand. And apart from that, they were also asked that no petition or no notice will be accepted without proper signatures. So this is what was carried out. It was a very short one indeed. As per his own words, it started at 10:02 a.m. and ended at 10:07 a.m. So there was hardly even 6 minutes for that matter. And then they were asked to get out. So there was still some clarity. Even Derek O'Brien openly challenged the CEC to release the video and the audio of what exactly happened in the meeting today. We are yet to hear that what exactly unfolded in ECI, but we know that this comes after a BJP delegation has already approached regarding ECI, regarding the violence which is being carried out in West Bengal. And again, another BJP delegation is set to visit, meet ECI, which included Virendra Kumar, Arjun Ram Meghwal and certain other ministers. We'll see what direction does this take? Back to
all
you.
right, well, thank you, Shambhavi, for getting us all those details. A 7-minute long meeting between TMC and EC, which really turned tense. We also move ahead, viewers, right now. Fresh violence has once again shaken Manipur. Militants from the hill areas, dominated by the Kuki, launched a bomb attack on a civilian house. Attack killed 2 children and triggered panic in the conflict-prone region. The police have taken 1 suspect into custody for questioning. The Manipur CM is also chairing high-level meetings. This happened yesterday. There's a report here telling you what's been happening in Manipur.
अभी तो कह रहा था कि अभी चीफ मिनिस्टर कह रहे थे, उससे आगे भी सभी लोग कह रहे थे कि मणिपुर में पीस आ गया। ये पीस है क्या? अगर ये पीस है तो हमें ये पीस नहीं चाहिए हमें।
ये बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट 1:05 में हुआ है। उसमें 2 बच्चे का जान गया है। 2 बच्चा, एक 5 साल का है, एक लड़की है, वो तो 5 महीना का है। ये बहुत छह इंसिडेंट है। उसका माँ भी अभी भी इंजर्ड है, हॉस्पिटल में ट्रीटमेंट के लिए घायल तरीके से इंजर्ड है। ये आतंकवादी लोग हम लोग को टारगेट कर रहा है, मैती लोग को। इसलिए सरकार से विनती है, जल्द से ये घटना के सॉल्यूशन चाहिए, इसके लिए इंसाफ चाहिए।
ये घटना करीब 1:05 में ऐसे होंगे। यही घटना हुआ है। ये अभी ये नॉर्थ साइड में हमारा बहू के साथ दो बच्चा है, वो तीनों एक साथ होता है। इसमें एक घटना हुआ है।
Well, getting you some breaking news coming in. This is in relation with the escalation, the West Asia situation. Israel opposition leader has said that following the government's complete failure to achieve the war's objectives, I will hold a special presser today at 6:10. The press conference is open for coverage and an opportunity for reporters' questions will be provided. So Israel opposition leader is calling the deal a political disaster. So of course, Israel's opposition not too happy with what has happened. A ceasefire which was negotiated between Iran and US. Just giving a context, Iran and US have agreed to a conditional 2-week ceasefire, and Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire between US and Iran if shipping is allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Tehran will agree to the end of fighting if attacks against Iran are halted. Getting you some more updates coming in on Republic TV. We're getting some breaking news coming in. There are reports of Bahrain media claiming that Patriot missile strike post-ceasefire. And this is a mystery missile strike reported in the Bahrain region. So big updates coming in here on Republic TV. Let's go straight across to the next set of updates. Now, we see that scenes are emerging from Bahrain showing the aftermath of a Patriot missile strike with damage reported in the affected area. So we have the picture coming in. Okay, you can see there's significant damage after that mystery missile strike which has happened a short while back. This is Bahrain, by the way. So this is Bahrain reports claiming that Patriot missile strike post-ceasefire, and this is the mystery missile, Patriot missile strike reported in Bahrain. So you can see that there's some significant damage which has been made to those buildings, and some parts of the buildings have now caught fire because of that strike. The scenes are emerging from Bahrain showing the aftermath of a missile strike. Let's go. Ishita is joining us from our newsroom. Ishita, yes, go ahead. These are pictures coming first on Republic. So Gulf nations have been struck multiple times, but post the ceasefire, we're coming to know that Bahrain has been struck. So that is raising a lot of questions now, Ishita.
Right, of course. Shvangi, we had seen just 90 minutes before the Trump deadline, there was a 2-week conditional ceasefire agreement that both the sides reached upon. It was from both the sides that they declared they will not be taking any offensive operation against each other. But even despite that, we're looking at Israel continuing its attacks against Lebanon, because it has clearly said that Lebanon is not part of this 2-week conditional ceasefire. But Iran did agree to stop all its attacks against the Gulf nations, and despite the announcement of ceasefire that is currently under effect, we're looking at this US Patriot missile strike being reported in Bahrain. Now, we do not have details as of now whether this missile was fired before the announcement of ceasefire or after it, but right now the strike in fact has been reported, and as we are showing the visuals on our screen, there's been a damage as well reported on a building in Bahrain, and this is despite the fact that right now a 2-week conditional ceasefire is underway, where both Iran and the US have agreed to stop all their aggression, stop all their offensive operations against each other. So, of course, we'll have to see whether this missile was fired before the announcement of this truce by Donald Trump or after it.
That's right. Hold on, Ishita. Getting some more breaking news coming in. Iraq has reopened airports and airspace. Iraq's Civilian Aviation Authority chief has said the country's airports and airspace have reopened following the ceasefire between the US, Israel and Iran. He made the announcement just hours after the 2-week succession of hostilities mediated by Pakistan went into effect. Airspace and flights throughout the region have been disrupted by the war. Baghdad and other airports were shuttered, and latter faces threats and attacks. So Iraqi airspace reopened after the ceasefire deal. So we're getting these updates coming in. I think we have Ishita back with us. Ishita, we are trying to get some more updates to understand whether the situation is looking a little bit more normal now. But that's what a lot of countries are expecting. And a lot of countries have welcomed the ceasefire.
Started on February 28th, all the region across the Gulf had been roped into this conflict. We had seen all the airspace getting shut, some for temporary basis, some for more prolonged time. But right now, the latest update we're getting is as the ceasefire has now been announced, we're inching towards some normalization. In fact, we could also see stabilization of oil traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. As far as airspace is concerned, the latest we're picking up is that Iraq, in fact, has now reopened its airports and airspace. Now, remember, this comes right after there was a 2-week conditional ceasefire agreed upon by both the sides, Iran and the US. And Iran, in fact, agreed to stop all its aggression, all its attacks that have been taking place on civilian sites all across the Gulf nations, including sites such as airports. So this time, taking into factor that there is now safer conditions around these civilian sites, Iraq, in fact, has reopened its airspace as well as airports. Now, we also have a statement from Iraq's Civilian Aviation Authority Chief Bankin Rekani, who's now said that the country's airports and airspace have reopened following the ceasefire between US, Israel and Iran. So we are looking at more normalization, more stabilization coming in across Gulf nations.
Now, thank you, Ishita, for getting us all those details. So Republic TV gets you the latest after the ceasefire announcement. And the US and Iran have come to terms for a peace deal now. While both sides claim victory against each other, questions arise over which country played what role in helping US-Iran reach this ceasefire. Among many countries, while Pakistan wants to take credit for the ceasefire, China emerges as a key player in helping in negotiations. Look at this report to understand what role China is playing in this ceasefire.
China is Tehran's biggest trading partner. Reports now suggest that it was China who spoke to the Iranians to get them on board to look for a path to ceasefire. Chinese officials were continuously in touch with Iranian officials as the negotiations were evolving. As per reports, Beijing primarily had been working with intermediaries. China worked with Pakistan, Turkey and Egypt as it tried to use its influence to de-escalate tensions. Earlier on Tuesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said all parties needed to demonstrate sincerity and quickly end this war that should not have happened in the first place. China said it was deeply concerned about the impact the conflict has had on the world economy and energy security. On Tuesday, China and Russia vetoed a UN resolution encouraging states to coordinate efforts to protect commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Both China and Russia termed the measure biased against Iran. The 15-member Security Council voted 11 in favor of the resolution, with 2 against it, being China and Russia. The opening of the Strait of Hormuz is crucial for China. Half of its crude oil imports pass through the Hormuz Strait. China relies on Strait of Hormuz for economic stability as it is the top importer of crude from this route. Roughly 84% of crude oil and condensates passing through the strait go to Asian markets. Over 90% of Iran's crude oil exports go to China, making Iran heavily reliant on China, whereas China uses this to maintain access to oil supplies. As a result, China has become a key diplomatic actor in keeping the strait open. China often utilized its influence with Iran to ensure its tankers receive passage during regional tensions. With a 2-week ceasefire in place, the next focus naturally turns to the Strait of Hormuz.
And the US and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with talks to finalize a peace deal set to begin in Pakistan's Islamabad on Friday. Australia, Japan, New Zealand welcomed the 2-week ceasefire in the Middle East that was reached to negotiate a resolution to the US-Israeli conflict with Iran. More details on how nations across the world reacted to the ceasefire deal.
Nations across Asia and the Pacific are welcoming the announcement of a 2-week pause in the war between Iran and the US. Just before Donald Trump's deadline came to an end. In Australia, Prime Minister Anthony